Chapter 903, Sees the Origin. Chapter 903, Sees the Origin. Dead Soul Mountain Range. Na Xin and Ouyang Luo Shuang stood next to each other as they were watching the sky with serious visages. A shiny green light hovered above Ouyang Luo Shuang. A green halo shimmered, repeatedly enlarging and shrinking. It was the dead soul's evil lair. Because the immemorial demonic flame had left the evil lair, Ouyang Luo Shuang could take control of it now. It also meant that she could eventually occupy the incipient extent. Ouyang Luo Shuang narrowed her eyes slightly, her face cold but bright. She was spinning her soul altar, combining her soul energy and the incipient extent, creating a wonderful resonance. The marvelous energy fluctuations emitted from her body. The evil lair bounced faster and faster. Na Xin frowned, glancing at her. It's no use. You can't find that unrecognizable place. Only the warrior who has fused with heaven flames can get in there after his heaven flame has swallowed all the other flames. And you don't have any heaven flames. Even if you cultivated space power, you wouldn't find it. Ouyang Luo Shuang's bright eyes dimmed and she sighed bitterly. Indeed, I can't find a trace. Did you also receive the method to get the origin from the inheritance you receive from the incipient extent? Na Xin suddenly asked, gazing at her. As far as I've known, only a few of the best warriors knew how to take the origin. I could see that you were impatient to get it. Do you know the method to seize it? Can we not just combine it with our God Soul? Ouyang Luo Shuang was confused. Is there something else to be done? Na Xin was surprised, laughing oddly. Oh, it turns out that you don't know. You little girl, you're lucky that you didn't enter Earth's inner core. Ha ha. If you act rashly, your soul will perish, leaving nothing behind. Ouyang Luo Shuang discolored. Please enlighten me. I don't know either. Na Xin forced a smile, shaking his head. The archaic continents which have an origin are so rare. They're so few that we can count them with our fingers even in a vast star area. In my knowledge, there were so many intimidating existences that wanted to take the origin. More often, they were out of their place and acted rashly. None of them had a decent end. He doesn't know how either. Ouyang Luo Shuang was shocked. She jolted up, rushing. He's a fool who entered that place recklessly. If he impulsively takes it, will he end up perishing his soul like you said? Na Xin frowned. Would he be that impulsive? You should have told him clearer. Ouyang Luo Shuang snorted. I'm afraid that he would take it immediately. You could have harmed him. Her words were heavy. He isn't the one who likes to take risks. He will be all right. Na Xin contemplated for a while. The origin of this land has existed for billions of years. This continent has given birth to countless outstanding warriors. It's still there, which means none of them had succeeded in taking it. Of course, it has something marvelous. He should know that, right? If he didn't know it and took it deliberately, what would happen then? Shouted Ouyang Luo Shuang. I'm afraid it won't be a good ending. Na Xin darkened his face. I think he wouldn't be in trouble. His heaven flames got the origin energy. He should have something unique to connect to the heaven flames. I think he will be all right. You better hope you're right. Ouyang Luo Shuang's face was cold. It seemed like she didn't want to see something bad happen to Shiyang. Na Xin hesitated for a while. He seemed to recognize how serious the situation could be. He pondered, closing his eyes. A soul fluctuation covering the entire Grace mainland was released from him, running directly into the earth. 10 seconds later, Na Xin opened his eyes, giving a low shout. I found him. His soul consciousness had pierced through tens of thousands of miles underground to connect to Shiyang. Don't take the origin impulsively. If you don't know how, just watch how it changes. Na Xin's soul consciousness thundered in Shiyang's sea of consciousness. Shiyang's consciousness was blurry. He woke up, his body shaking. He had consumed too much life energy. The fierce battle between the heaven flames was much more dangerous than what he had thought. It wasn't like the previous one. The primal chaos sacred flame and the immemorial demonic flame were the two high-ranked heaven flames. Their intellect was clear and their life forms had ascended to perfection. They were the most marvelous creatures in this world. The immemorial demonic flame was at level 8. Which level was the flame that could scare it, the flame that ranked first among the heaven flames? Level 9. The top level of the heaven flames. A chill current poured into his god soul from atop his head, covering the sea of consciousness and giving him an extreme fear. At this moment, he recognized that he was too impetuous. He was just at the king god realm and he thought that he could do anything as he pleased in Grace Mainland, including gathering all the heaven flames. The appearance of the immemorial demonic flame and the primal chaos sacred flame were powerful slaps to his face. He now knew how perilous this kind of creature was when they reached the high level. Na Shin's soul consciousness came quickly and left even more quickly. It disappeared shortly after. Shi Yang wore an unusually grim face while electric-like lights were crossing his mind. He was trying his best to find a way to support the heaven flames. I warned him. Na Shin took a deep breath, smiling reluctantly in the world outside. It's not too late. He hasn't done anything. With my reminder, he won't act rashly. Ouyang Luo Shuang exhaled in relief. She considered Shi Yang a thorny section of her martial path. She had used Shi Yang as the target for her cultivation. If Shi Yang died, she would have no one to compete against. At least, I have to defeat him myself. Then, he can die, thought Ouyang Luo Shuang. The fierce battle of the heaven flames became more ferocious. Staying deep underground, Shi Yang could still feel the ice-cold flame and the earth flame shivering anxiously. Before the primal chaos sacred flame appeared, the battle between the 7 heaven flames and the immemorial demonic flame could be considered an equal battle. He didn't need to supplement his soul energy. However, when the heaven flame which ranked first appeared, not only the 7 heaven flames but also the brutal immemorial demonic flame had to change its opponent. However, even when the heaven flames joining hands together with Shi Yang's life energy, they seemed unable to win. The primal chaos sacred flame had been in Earth's inner core, seizing the origin energy for so many years. It was unimaginably powerful, indeed. A wisp of Na Shin's soul consciousness had awakened Shi Yang. However, after several minutes, due to his continually consumed soul energy, he felt dizzy again and his consciousness started to drift away. At this moment, Shi Yang figured out another meaning in Na Shin's words. Origin. It's true. It should be the origin, and it must be the origin. His eyes brightened, gazing at the origin in front of him, gazing at the most marvelous thing in this world. His desire was hard to calm down. He has no choice. The heaven flames had to take all of his life energy. Or his soul altar had to be broken and be vanishing. Or he could let things go and let the primal chaos sacred flame take what it wanted and swallow all the heaven flames. Or he will forcefully take the origin energy and see if he can change everything. All the heaven flames born in Grace Mainland were closely related to the origin. The life form of each heaven flame depended on the origin. If he seized the origin, will he be able to change all these things? This thought arose once more, and it was like a haunting ghost that wouldn't be driven away. As his soul energy drifted, his consciousness became hazy. He chose to forget Na Shin's reminder while the thought of seizing the origin was surging vehemently. Eventually, when he couldn't gather his consciousness anymore, he had completely forgotten Na Shin's reminder. His shivering finger touched his forehead. The soul altar looked like a precious tower with many tears flying out from his head. The vast sea of consciousness, the magical powers Upanishad tear, the god soul, the flame of life, they piled up marvelously and beautifully. His god soul floated on the tear of power Upanishad, flickering like a running candle in the light, which would extinguish in any minute. Although he was in such a bad condition, his soul altar seemed unaware of the danger, flying towards the origin. Sizzle. Shi Yang's soul altar collided with a layer of hazy grey air. The traces of soul consciousness in the sea of consciousness were burned down instantly. Shortly, 1/10 of his vast sea of consciousness was consumed. He felt a pain that he couldn't endure from deep inside his soul. It was like a sharp weapon stabbing his brain. This kind of pain couldn't be described. Even if he was good at enduring pain and suffering, he couldn't stand it anymore. His god soul swayed and it was about to vanish. His dull, blurry consciousness woke up under such pain. Also at that moment, The blood mark on the forehead of his god soul suddenly sparkled. An electric-like light bloomed dazzlingly from the mark. A dusty memory fell like rain, running directly to a deep place of his soul. Heaven flame refining godly technique. Boom. The fantasy sky ring on his finger exploded. All kinds of cultivating materials that he had to spend a lot of effort to collect floated from the broken ring. Thunder witch wood, bloody soul divine water, 5 elements crystal marrow. The 3 main ingredients and many auxiliary materials flooded his sea of consciousness, congregating there. The grey air intruding the sea of consciousness seemed to stimulate something. The blood mark on the god soul sent out a rainbow light, covering all main and auxiliary materials. Sizzle, sizzle, sizzle. The frightening electric light and the divine light gathered. All the materials scattered, turning into a thick, chaotic mist that covered the entire sea of consciousness and the soul altar under the effects of heaven flame refining godly technique. The pain that could be carved into his bones disappeared abruptly. The layers of grey air couldn't threaten him anymore. Shi Yang was happy, but he didn't dare to linger. He controlled the soul altar that directly crossed many grey air layers. He proceeded to seize the origin. As the heaven flame refining godly technique was processing, the most magical energy in earth and heaven expanded from the soul altar, seizing the origin. At that moment, Shi Yang's soul altar and the origin formed a connection. Then, a light radiated as his soul altar and the origin both appeared at the place where heaven flames were fighting fiercely. The battle of the heaven flames was now taking place right in front of him. At the most critical moment, Shi Yang stormed in. Chapter 904, Witness billions of years pass by. Chapter 904, Witness billions of years pass by. This was the unrecognizable area that Na Shin had mentioned. This place was by the chaotic space basin. 5-colored light meandered beautifully like long rivers crossing the sky. Light dots fell like unceasing meteors. Each moving light hid a power Upanishad, including the derivatives of 5 elements: metal, wood, water, fire, earth, gravity, true light, death and life, space, reincarnation, and more. They were all mysterious and subtle, beyond people's imagination. This place didn't have earth and heaven energy, and the rivers carrying the powers Upanishad didn't have any attacking power. However, the mysteries of those powers didn't need the energy to urge. They could move naturally under some rules of earth and heaven. It was like a dream. 10 flames in different colors and different auras were diverging in different areas, just like the sea of light. They were trying to devour each other. His soul altar floated above the center of the heaven flames battle, which was at the critical moment. However, his soul altar didn't look normal. It had divided into 2 regions. The sea of consciousness was the lowest tier. Above it was the heaven flames and the powers Upanishad. This was where the soul altar divided. The god soul hovered above the power Upanishad tier, moving continually with the blood mark. The god soul was a projection of his god soul with the burning flame of life that looked magnificently beautiful. Floating above the heaven flames tier was the origin. The origin and his god soul were in 2 different areas. The origin didn't have layers of grey air circling it. Now, it had only the rare and precious cultivating materials. The heaven flame refining godly technique made thunder witch wood, 5 elements crystal marrow, blood soul divine water, and other auxiliary materials cover the origin like a membrane. The materials gradually dissolved and the magical energy seeped into the origin. His god soul still controlled the heaven flame refining godly technique, trying to merge the origin with his god soul. However, he didn't succeed. Whenever the origin came close to establishing a connection with the god soul, an unknown force that went against rules of earth and heaven would appear and forcefully cut the connection between Shi Yang and the origin. He couldn't fuse with it. It seemed like something went wrong with the heaven flame refining godly technique that was instructed by the ring spirit. The origin couldn't merge with his god soul. After many failed attempted, Shi Yang quieted down to analyze. While his hands were tied, the blood mark in his god soul had a strange commotion. A flow of magical energy fluctuation was generated from the blood mark, flooding the god soul. The pure soul energy shot out, forcefully taking something from Shi Yang's god soul. It was an illusory shadow, a replica of his god soul that was identical to his. Parts of the soul, thoughts, traces, memories, and even the foundation of life were withdrawn from his god soul. The powerful energy of the blood mark then dragged it toward the origin. Soul dividing. A flash of light appeared in his mind and Shi Yang understood right away. The profundity that the blood mark was using was to divide the soul. It split the soul and duplicated his seals, creating another version of him. The soul that had just been split had taken a large amount of Shi Yang's life energy and his god soul, making him exhausted and feel like he was actually dying. He didn't have any extra bit of energy to observe the situation. The split soul moved toward the origin under the blood mark's urge. That split soul seemed to meet some requirements of earth and heaven's rules. It wasn't attacked and directly entered the origin. No gap between them. Boom. The thunder witchwood sparked. The blood soul divine water, the 5 elements crystal marrow, and other auxiliary materials dissolved rapidly. Strange energies started to seep into the origin from the membrane they had formed. Shi Yang's split soul had fused into one with that origin. Their fusion hadn't finished yet though. During the progress, the main and auxiliary materials melted, pouring into the origin, which facilitated and perfected the fusion between the split soul and the origin. At that moment, glum and mournful emotions and auras of archaic times emerged from a deep place in his soul. Billions of years ago, a life star floated in a desolate galaxy, continuously taking in energy from outer space, which gave vitality to it. After an unknown period, the barren life star started to have seas and foliage. Some kind of outer space energy fell into that life star like giant meteors. It then stimulated the profundities of earth and heaven, which gave birth to formidable, giant immemorial creatures. The immemorial creatures were born with the gift of knowing how to utilize powers, absorbing energy to strengthen themselves and advancing their realms. Then one day, due to the competition for earth and heaven energy, wars exploded between immemorial creatures, sweeping the entire life star. Many immemorial creatures fell. The perception of immemorial creatures which won the war became more profound. As they understood the truth of earth and heaven, they didn't want to limit themselves to only a life star. They then entered outer space to seek for utmost power. This continent quieted down the second time. The immemorial era ended. Huge transformations happened. 100,000 years passed hurriedly. One day, a bunch of strange light fell from outer space, exploding in the sky. New vitality came to the continent. Although the immemorial creatures had fallen for many years, some bodies still remained. Receiving the mysterious vitality, they started to change silently. Due to their different races, the dead immemorial creatures transformed, spending thousands of years for new developments and giving birth to new lives. God clan, demon clan, monster clan, giant clan, dark spirit clan, corpse clan, human clan, sea clan, ghost mark clan, dark clan. Bizarre races originated from the dead bodies of different immemorial creatures. With different origins, they diverged into different races. The archaic continent had creatures for the second time. The ancient time started. As they were from different races, they had different cultivation methods, so they didn't bring grudges or create tension. They had lived in peace for dozens of thousands of years. Then, the Second War took place. The God clan became very powerful. The other 9 clans united to exile the God clan. Many experts had fallen. Then, the 9 clans lived together in the ancient continent. The ancient time ended. Human clan was the smallest and weakest clan. However, they had many dangerous and adaptive features. They could grow rapidly. They could breed and mix their blood with almost every race. Due to their bad innate endowment, they pursued intelligence instead. Members of the human clan were smart and they were good at strategizing and planning. After blending their blood with different races, human clan eventually had outstanding talents, which were as excellent as other clans. With their super reproducing ability, the human clan multiplied their population, filling each corner of the ancient continent. As the human clan's population had been increasing too much, their demands on natural resources became too burdening, which concerned the other 8 clans. They recognized that a great disaster was about to happen. Another war started for the entire ancient continent. The Antiquity era started. Human clan had depended on their advantages of large numbers and the abilities of their hybrids to gain the upper hand. After the hotshots of the 8 clans had fallen, their next generations were hopeless. Day after day, the human clan pressed on their advantages, winning battle after battle. The populations of the other 8 clans continued to decrease. The human clan ultimately won the war. The other clans were sealed or fled away to the smallest spaces in outer space, leaving the archaic continent to human clan. The wind changed. Whenever a new era arrived giving birth to new generations of experts, a war would take place on the continent. The ancient continent had experienced the immemorial era, the ancient time, and the antiquity era. After 3 big epochs, the continent was shattered and worn out. The energy it had accumulated for billions of years was about to exhausted. The origin couldn't do anything as the ancient continent had come to the last phase of its energy cycle. During the 3 eras, the origin had the chances to diverge its power to fuse with different creatures and create heaven flames. The heaven flames were the origin's hosts. It wanted those heaven flames to be stronger. It hoped that even if it vanished, it could still leave some of its vestiges to this world through the heaven flames. The ancient, desolate, and mournful overflowed from the origin, mixing with Shi Yang's split soul. At this moment, Shi Yang became the origin, and this continent his body. He was like an audience watching the whole life of this ancient continent from birth, thriving and then vanishing. As his soul and the origin were fused, those images reflected in his heart, becoming his life seal, which stayed forever in the deep place of his soul, memories that he would never forget. Today, he had fused with the origin, and he seemed to become the real master of this ancient continent. This continent had become like his child. He had just watched his child grow up, age, and come to the end of life. Eventually, it dried up and died. This was a natural cycle. From deep inside his soul, the ancient continent had finished by projecting the recent events and today's commotion until this very moment. Shi Yang suddenly found that while he didn't notice, his split soul had completely fused with the origin. Now, it had replaced the origin to be the new master of the ancient continent. However, his newborn baby was already aged and senile. It was the sunset behind the mountain. It would pass away soon. The origin was the most mysterious existence in this world, and it wasn't a still object. Its life form was totally different from normal creatures. It had witnessed everything. The 3 main materials and many more auxiliary materials had all melted, turning into a fluid that has been absorbed into his core and the origin. Now he had another soul on the heaven flames tier of his soul altar. It was a chaotic sphere, moving continuously as if it would never cease. The God soul and that origin soul seemed to become his left and right brain respectively. The 2 souls weren't independent but connected to each other. They had the same connection, thoughts, traces of memory, and the foundation of life. Shi Yang knew that the chaotic sphere soul was also within him. The fierce battle between the 10 heaven flames was still happening. However, when he looked at them this time, he had a different feeling. Those 10 heaven flames were part of his origin soul. They were like 10 wisps of his pure soul consciousness. When this thought appeared in his mind, the sphere origin soul suddenly generated a suction force. His combined origin soul had gripped and pulled the 10 heaven flames, which were floating everywhere, forcefully towards his soul. The 7 heaven flames, which were connected with him before, took the initiative and entered his sphere origin soul without any hesitation. Then, his power multiplied and the suction force increased several times. The immemorial demonic flame and the primal chaos-scared flame tried hard to resist his force. However, after he had fused with the 7 heaven flames, they couldn't struggle anymore. Eventually, they were pulled into that sphere of origin soul. 10 different wisps of soul memory moved in panic and conflicted with each other inside the origin soul. They were all trying to take the upper hand, showing their traces of life. However, under the power of the origin soul, 10 soul memories and the soul thoughts had become part of his soul. Eventually, they fused with each other, turning into his incomplete traces of life. This was true fusion. Chapter 905, 2 Souls. Chapter 905, 2 souls. Shi Yang's soul altar was floating in the unrecognizable area. His soul altar divided into 2 sections with 2 souls. One of them had a sphere shape with the chaotic energy of the 10 heaven flames within, which was being adjusted and stabilized. The soul above the tier of powers Upanishad was exhausted and dispirited. It was quiet, as if it was trying to feel something in this mysterious area. The mysterious rivers in this place twinkled like stars by his soul altar. Those rivers were filled with energy fluctuations of different powers Upanishad. After an unknown period, a river appeared by his soul altar. Shi Yang suddenly pulled his consciousness together and his soul altar moved accordingly, flying into that river. That river contained space energy fluctuation. The soul altar flew into the middle of the river. Shi Yang felt like he had fallen into layers of chaotic spaces. His soul altar moved like a shuttle, piercing through many doors. He could get through several space doors without any trouble. The soul altar just flashed and slid through them smoothly. It seemed like his understanding of space power Upanishad had reached a certain level, which facilitated him to no longer be stagnant moving in this place. However, not long afterward, he found trouble. In front of him was a space layer, which was filled with radiant light. It functioned as a barricade to his soul altar. That door had many space lines and patterns moving disorderly. They seemed to hide some truth of earth and heaven. His soul altar had to stop. He tried to make his space energy fluctuate in the same frequency as the space energy of that door. It wasn't an easy task. His god soul was dispirited, gazing at the area with glorious, moving light while trying to adjust the energy fluctuation of his tier of power Upanishad. His soul moved like tentacles, touching the patterns made of disorderly space energy to sense the meaning and new profundities of space. Shi Yang didn't know how long had passed. He just calmed down and tried to comprehend. After a while of comprehending the meanings, space energy fluctuations in his tier of powers Upanishad had matched the patterns on that door. On that space layer, a door suddenly opened. His soul altar seized the chance and pierced through. A new door appeared similar to the previous one with hidden space mysteries. His soul had touched it once, and he became baffled immediately. Swish! His soul altar was shocked as if the sky had turned upside down. His consciousness became blurry. While his soul was still perplexed, he woke up to see himself in the Earth's inner core. However, the origin was no longer in front of him. His soul was tired while his god body had an extreme desire for earth and heaven energy all of a sudden, a desire that he couldn't press down no matter how hard he had tried. He was like a drug-addicted maniac who hadn't received a dose for quite a long time. This crazy yearning was madly burning his will. His soul altar spun rapidly like a vortex as if it wanted to harvest something. Vaguely, he realized something, his face shocked. In the next moment, the entire ancient continent was projected in his sea of consciousness. He could check any corner of this continent. No one could hide from his observation. In this place, he was the sole god. His finger touched the void and a space slit appeared in front of him. He flashed and disappeared. After a blink, a space slit appeared above Coldwin Island of the Endless Sea. Shi Yang emerged from there immediately. Fei Lan, Leona, Zi Yarrow, Feng Rao, and Ka Tuor were wandering around Coldwind Island as if they were observing the magical features of this ancient land. Shi Yang came out of nowhere, landing by Feng Rao and asking her hurriedly, "Do you have divine crystals?" "Yes, I do." Feng Rao was scared. "Are you all right?" "Give them to me. Give me all of them. All the divine crystals." Shi Yang shouted hastily. Feng Rao didn't hesitate, giving him all the divine crystals she had in the fantasy sky ring. They looked like transparent rocks flying towards him. A powerful suction force came from his god body, covering all the divine crystals. The divine crystals stuck on his body like fish scales like his armor. The energy in those divine crystals triggered at once, flowing massively into his god body. "Not enough." Shi Yang hastened, saying only that. His body flashed. He disappeared one more time. "Give me divine crystals. All of them." He shouted at Ka Tuor, who was confused, giving a low shout. Ka Tuor was also astounded. However, he didn't say much. He just gave him all the divine crystals in his ring. Those crystals then stuck on Shi Yang's body like fish scales. Senior, Ka Fu keeps most of the divine crystals. I only have this many, Ka Tuor explained. He looked a little bit embarrassed. Shi Yang was baffled for a while, disappearing. Give me divine crystals. All. He appeared by Zi Yao. Give me divine crystals. Give me divine crystals. Give me divine crystals. He flashed on and off between Zi Yao, Leona, and Carthew, making the same request. Those who knew him generously gave him all the divine crystals they had. The divine crystals then turned into the fish scales that stuck onto his god body. Shortly after, his body looked like one giant chunk of divine crystal. His god body was like a sponge, taking in the energy of the divine crystals massively. Each of the vessels in his body bulged, refining the energy of the divine crystals. All the energy then flooded the essence Qi ancient tree. The essence Qi ancient tree throve rapidly. Its jewel-like branches were weaving thickly as the tree jutted higher and higher. At the same time, Shi Yang took out the heavenly mending pellet he had exchanged from Jester and swallowed it. Shi Yang stayed in the center of Cold Wind Island, sitting down by Leona, Fei Lan, and Zi Yao. People had recognized this significant event. Feng Rao, Carthew, and Ka Tuor also gathered from their areas, surrounding Shi Yang with strange faces. Is he about to break through? Leona looked at Fei Lan as she couldn't confirm this fact. Yeah, he's about to break through to the original God realm. Fei Lan nodded, her face strangely frowning. However, others didn't look like that when they went through their breakthrough. Is it maybe because of the exhausted energy in this continent? So he needs a lot of divine crystals, asked Ka Tuor. Even if there's no beam of energy, using tens of thousands of divine crystals is a little bit exaggerated, right? Feng Rao had a stern visage. Did something unexpected happen? People then looked at Fei Lan. Fei Lan's eyes were filled with immense divine light as she continued observing Shi Yang, not losing track of him for even a moment. Suddenly, she said, he's breaking through, but his tendency doesn't look normal. She screamed all of a sudden. Everybody was frightened as they never imagined her screaming. The thick layer of divine crystals suddenly brightened like electricity winding around Shi Yang. His pores now had a clear suction force that madly absorbed the energy of the divine crystals. Gradually, light spots as glorious as stars shot out from Shi Yang's god body marvelously. It's the light emitting from his acupuncture points. Fei Lan hissed. Everybody was frightened. Breaking through the original god realm could have this much activity from the acupuncture points. Ka Tuor's voice trembled as he asked. No one could answer him. I think he's using so much energy from the divine crystals not just to break through or condense the original spirit. He ate 2 heavenly mending pellets, which can heal even the greatest loss of his soul energy with only one piece. After pausing for a while, Fei Lan continued, he seems to have quenched his body. Using the acupuncture points to absorb the energy from the divine crystals, I have never seen anyone done it before. Also, I have never heard of anyone breaking through the original god realm with this form. Everybody quieted down. They knew Shi Yang must have undergone some marvelous changes. However, they didn't know whether those changes were good or bad. The only thing they could do was to guard this area to prevent any other people from disturbing Shi Yang's advancement. Cold Wind Island. Shi Yang floated in the center of the island, closing his eyes with his god body emitting strange energy fluctuations. Tens of thousands of divine crystals shrouded his body, radiating dazzlingly. After the energy had started to pour into his god body, one of his acupuncture points glowed. At the same time, the divine crystals, which contained earth and heaven energy, lost their energy and turned into the ordinary rocks, falling off of his god body. After around 6 hours, half of the divine crystals were exhausted, turning into grey stones and falling off his god body. Not enough. It's obvious that those divine crystals aren't enough. Fei Lan was astounded, hissing, he needs more divine crystals. Ka Tuor, Zi Yao, Feng Rao, and Carthew discolored, taking action almost immediately. They scattered, releasing their soul consciousness to find their friends who also came here. Fei Lan took a deep breath, using her vast soul consciousness to contact the giants. She wanted to do something for Shiyang. Dead Soul Mountain Range. Na Shin, the giant oldie, was still waiting for something in silence. All of a sudden, he jolted and frowned. His in Cold Wind Island. Please lend us the divine crystals. Have your tribal members bring them. We promise we will repay all of it. Shiyang is breaking through. He seems to need a massive amount of earth and heaven energy. However, earth and heaven energy in this continent have been exhausted. He doesn't have enough. Fei Lan sent her soul message to Na Shin's Sea of Consciousness. Why did he go to Cold Wind Island? Ouyang Luo Shuang was confused. Na Shin shook his head, not explaining anything. He squinted, releasing his soul consciousness to contact his fellow giants on this ancient continent. Whoever is near Cold Wind Island, hurry back to the island and give your divine crystals to our little friends. Many giants received his message. They didn't say anything, pausing their work and going to Cold Wind Island. 4 hours later, the first giant came. He walked to Fei Lan and asked, "Our tribal oldie asked us. Do you need divine crystals?" Fei Lan nodded. That giant smiled honestly, throwing the divine crystals he had to Fei Lan. He had more than 10,000 pieces. Fei Lan was so happy. She used her energy to cover the divine crystals and threw them at Shiyang's god body. Shiyang's body then sucked them. The divine crystals stuck on the chunk made of divine crystals. At this moment, the divine crystals stuck on his body have almost all been consumed. Half of 720 acupuncture points in his body were glowing magnificently. However, it seemed that the quantity of divine crystal he had was insufficient. Luckily, after another 2 hours, another clansman of the giant tribe returned. The giant gave Fei Lan divine crystals as Na Shin had asked them to do and let her throw them to Shiyang personally. Chapter 906, Original God Realm. Chapter 906, Original God Realm. Cold Wind Island, Endless Sea. Shiyang looked like a small mountain built of divine crystals, floating in the center of this island. Divine crystals of different sizes stuck to his body. The light was moving as the massive energy of the divine crystals continued to pour into his god body. Fei Lan, Leona, Zi Yarrow, Feng Rao, and Ka Tuor circled him, their faces strange. Around 10 giants who were around 10 meters tall also stayed nearby to watch him. They were very curious and excited. 7 days passed quickly. During these 7 days, Shiyang didn't move. His eyes were still closed. It seemed like his soul had wandered to the divine land. However, his god body had continued to absorb the massive amount of energy from the divine crystals. This process seemed to never end. Today, Na Shin took Ouyang Luo Shuang and they arrived in Cold Wind Island from Dead Soul Mountain Range. At first glance, they saw Shiyang floating there. Na Shin's eyes brightened like diamonds. He couldn't help but cry, indeed. Ouyang Luo Shuang shivered slightly as bright light sparkled in her eyes. She whispered loudly, "He must have fused with the origin." Na Shin nodded, giving compliments. "I can't believe it. This kid is supernatural. He dared to fuse the heaven flames with the origin. When he breaks into the original God realm, it will be a big happy surprise." Seeing Na Shin arrive, Fei Lan's team came forward, bending their bodies slightly to thank him for his generosity. Na Shin waved his hands, smiling. "Just the divine crystals. No need to mind them. We're also happy to see that our ancestral land could have such a genius." "Tribal oldie, what's going on?" asked a muscular giant. "He has fused with the origin. He's breaking through to the original God realm. When he wakes up, his original spirit will be formed," smiled Na Shin. "Fused with the origin?" Fei Lan's wrinkled face shivered as she was astounded. "This place has an origin?" "Of course," Na Shin confirmed, smiling. "Although the origin is small, it does exist. He has such a fortune. He has fused his soul with the origin. Perhaps, when he wakes up, he will be the sole god of this continent. Every single thing in this continent won't be able to avoid his soul's extent." Everybody was dumbstruck. "How much do you know about the origin, precursor?" Fei Lan chose her words gingerly, speaking in a low tone. Our raging flame star area doesn't have any ancient continents with an origin. I've heard from my precursors just a little bit about them. Please enlighten us about the profundities of the origin. Leona, Carthew, and the others also looked at him yearningly. Ouch, Na Shin was bewildered. He looked a bit embarrassed. I don't understand its mysteries thoroughly. Anyway, all we know about the origin are told through generations. However, no one has ever seen it. I can confirm one thing though. The one who has the origin will become the master of the ancient continent. He will be able to connect the entire continent using his soul. After pausing for a while, Na Shin continued, anyway, there's something different. The incipient extent is generated by the soul altar of the warrior, which can be easily controlled to perform different abilities. A warrior with the origin can't do that. However, we have to use millions or billions to count the number of years an ancient continent has existed. The origin is the witness of the long river of history. A warrior with the origin can see the birth, the peak, and decline of the said ancient continent. Through that sequence, he will be able to understand some deep meanings of earth and heaven. This kind of encounter helps the warrior in progressing his realm a lot. As soon as he said that, everybody admired while discreetly being surprised. Anyway, he doesn't look like what I said Na Shin. Everybody was stunned, waiting for his next explanation. Although he has to fuse with the origin, I don't think he has to use so many divine crystals like that, right? Na Shin wasn't sure. Look at that amount of divine crystals. Even I can't estimate the pure energy in there. He's just breaking to the original God realm from his King God realm. Why does he need a lot of dense energy like that? What is that light emitted from his acupuncture points? Apparently, he couldn't see what was happening either. The giant didn't know it, so everybody else could only force a smile and observe the situation. Na Shin was bewildered for a while before he smiled and relaxed. Seems like this boy knows something beyond our knowledge. Otherwise, we wouldn't see such a phenomenon. Haha, just keep it low and watch the changes. Everybody didn't know what to say. Also, they knew they didn't have any better solution, so they continued to watch Shi Yang. Several days passed. The divine crystals lost their energy and fell off Shi Yang's body. They turned into normal rocks. Some even scattered into dust, scattering away. Gradually, all the divine crystals stuck on his body fell. In the end, dozens of remaining divine crystals still had a little amount of energy. Shi Yang's god body couldn't absorb all the divine crystals, which meant his need of energy had been saturated. Although Shi Yang's god body didn't take more energy, the light projected from his acupuncture points was still dazzling. 720 acupuncture points were spread around his muscles. They were blindingly bright, just like marvelously twinkling stars. His breathing gradually calmed down. It was like his breathing had magically matched with some movement of this archaic continent. It was unknown why people could feel the aura of the earth under their feet from him. It seemed like he had turned into a part of this ancient continent. The most important part. At this moment, everybody now knew that Shi Yang's breakthrough had passed the critical point. He just needed time to finish it. The warrior who fuses with the origin has to condense his essence chi several times more. It should be like a ribbon in the galaxy. It's the god power. Fei Lan took a deep breath, turning to Na Shin and asking for his opinion. So after Shi Yang has broken through, his essence chi will automatically transform into god power? People here had never heard about the god power. Listening to her question, they all turned to Na Shin. Na Shin smiled and nodded. True. He can control the god power in advance because his original spirit has the origin. He paused for a while, looking at Carthew, Zi Yarrow, and Ka Tuor, speaking sincerely. Although you guys are all at the original god realm, the original spirit he has condensed should be much more magical than yours. I don't know much about it particularly. I just heard some rumors, so I don't dare say this is certain. God power. Feng Raos knitted her bold brows. What's the difference? It's the purest form of earth and heaven energy, said Fei Lan. Before we've broken through to the ethereal god realm, the energies in the warriors' bodies are also different due to different races. For example, the demon clan cultivates earth and heaven energy in the form of demon chi. After they've refined it, it will turn into the demon origin. And the ghost mark clan accumulate mysterious yin chi in your body, it's the yin power. The dark clan cultivates 9 serenities chi, it's the dark power. And the monster clan has the monstrous power. Different races have different body structures. Although they are different forms of energy, they originated from the same earth and heaven energy. This condition will last until the warriors have reached the ethereal god realm. Their energies then will be converted to god power. The mighty god power can break the chains of limitation. Warriors with god power can seize any kind of energy. They can absorb demon chi, 9 serenities chi, mysterious yin chi, anything to create the god power. God power can become the combination of different energies or the sublimated form of energy. It's the most primal form of earth and heaven energy. Fei Lan talked slowly, and while she was speaking, she often looked at Na Xin as if she wanted him to confirm that what she was saying was true. Na Xin smiled and continued to nod to confirm her knowledge. After she finished, he summarized. Usually, when a warrior is breaking through the ethereal god realm, he can convert his energy to god power. However, a few people with amazing destinies who got some mysterious but marvelous encounters can create god power in the original god realm. And Shi Yang is this sort of person. Everybody put on a longing face. "He's worth the name of my senior," said Ka Tuor. "My man is that marvelously unique." Feng Rao smiled proudly and charmingly. "His Shi Yang all right," nodded Carthew. Fei Lan and Leona expressed that this was inevitable and right. While they were talking, the light on Shi Yang's 720 acupuncture points dimmed out. Eventually, all the light disappeared. Those glorious beams of light seemed to be retrieved into his god body. After a while, a surging wave of energy emitted from his god body. Tiny contaminants oozed out from his pores. Then, a sour smell diffused. Those were dregs generated by the god body, one of the barriers of the warrior's cultivation. While the god body took in energy, contaminants and dregs would settle in the veins and pores. They would hinder the circulation of energy, which reduced the performance of a tenacious god body. When those dregs oozed out, it meant Shi Yang's god body had been quenched to another level. A flame ignited and those dregs and contaminants were burned down, leaving no trace. Shi Yang's god body was dark red, emitting radiant light. He looked like the perfect saber. Each of his muscles was lean and tight. They didn't look too big, but they astonishingly matched with each other. Everybody was surprised. Looking at his body, they could see the bursting energy within his muscles. That god body is so strong that its tenaciousness could compare to our giant tribe. He seems to have something magical, Na Xin appraised. His body contains blood chi that is much more than the giants at the same level, and his body is dozens of times smaller than ours. A giant at the original god realm looked at Shi Yang and then closed his eyes to sense. After a while, he became dispirited. How could it be? He's just a human. He looks fragile and small. How could he have reached such intensity? He couldn't explain it, and neither could the others. Is it because of the origin? Carthew asked. Na Xin shook his head. No. The origin could help the soul alter only. It has no effect on the god body. His wonderful changes in his god body could be because of something we didn't know. They didn't know the reasons, and they were very suspicious. They thought that everything about Shi Yang was completely different from normal people. He was simply a freak. While the others were still dumbstruck, Shi Yang's brows twitched. He had been quiet for so many days. It seemed like he was about to wake up as he had finally finished his breakthrough. Seconds later, Shi Yang woke up, chuckling. Chapter 907, The Soul God. Chapter 907, The Soul God. Opening his eyes, Shi Yang smiled, seeing his friends. His condition was now perfect. His god body was refined one more time. Each of 720 acupuncture points in his body had become a new world with territory several times bigger. His soul consciousness checked his body's condition. The massive vortexes were revolving unceasingly in the acupuncture points according to the miraculous rules of nature. Crystal lines crossed the world inside the acupuncture points like gorgeous rainbows in the void. They elongated to extremely far areas, creating some unknown, magical spirit chart. Although the god body was as rigid as the purest iron, once the energy circulated, it was extremely flexible. Shi Yang could do anything he pleased. The soul altar had 2 areas in the tier of Upanishad and heaven flames above the sea of consciousness. The 2 souls floated above that tier. One was his original soul, controlling the important functions of the entire body. It connected the vortex in his abdomen and the luxuriant god power ancient tree. The fountain of the enormous energy glowed radiantly. Near there was an immense nebula with countless stars. A massive diamond-like star was still moving in that nebula. His thought flickered. The newly generated god power flowed like a stream of stars, rolling in his vessels and creating the immense energy fluctuation. Original god realm. He had finally crossed the threshold. After countless times of ascetical cultivation, he had finally reached this realm today. Although they were all at original god realm, he believed his real competence had far surpassed Ka Tuor and Z Yaros, the 2 warriors who had just entered the original god realm too. If he had to risk his life against them, he was definitely sure that he could easily kill those who had just entered the first sky of original god realm like Ka Tuor and Z Yao. And it was highly possible that he could defeat Aogu Duo, a second sky of original god realm, as well. A challenge of skipping level wasn't really a matter to him. Quite the contrary, it brought him more confident. Na Xin, the giants, Fei Lan, Leona, and Carthew were eyeing Shi Yang. They wanted to know how tremendous he had become. Fusing with the origin was something that only the luckiest man in legends could do. His luck was amazing. He had the god power even before his right time. Such a lucky champ, Na Xin appraised. He has the origin and fused it with his soul. Haha, this time we got to our ancestral land. Nobody could get a bigger harvest than yours. Carthew's group was envious. The raging flamestar area didn't have any ancient continents. The description and explanation of the origin were just legends. They didn't know about its profundities. The legends of the origin were mysterious and unclear. Still, their unclear knowledge of the origin didn't mean that they knew nothing about its magical effects. My fate has always been good, Shi Yang chuckled. The 10 heaven flames were born by a beam of the origin's purest energy. After they had been fused with the origin, which then perfectly combined with Shi Yang's soul, the experience of each heaven flame had become a trace of a memory deeply carved in his mind, becoming part of his soul. The spherical soul was the origin, the heaven flames, and the real master of Grace Mainland. The continent was divided into many pieces, projected in his sea of consciousness. When his thoughts flickered, no area on this continent could avoid his soul sensing. He was the sole god of this continent. Shi Yang was like an audience member watching the birth of a continent, observing it thrive to the peak and then decline. He saw all the events that had happened in the billions of years. His familiarity with this continent was greater than any other existence. His soul was the inner core of the continent, which used to be the fountain of energy. Have you found what you wanted to see yet? Shi Yang stopped smiling, glancing at Na Xin. We haven't located the target yet. Na Xin shook his head, forcing a smile. The ancestral land that year and what we see today are different. We need more time. Let me help you. Shi Yang pondered for a while and then grinned. He touched the air. Space power Upanishad changed at his fingertip. A ring of light suddenly enlarged, creating a light passage. People could see a vague area through that light passage. The ancient continent is divided into several pieces. Due to the change of seas, many areas were relocated. I can find what you can't search as easily as flipping a hand. Shi Yang said seriously. Go. At the end of that light passage is a piece of the barren continent. It used to be the cradle of your giant clan and it is also the ancestral land you've mentioned. There's a strange area 1,000 meters underground. It should be the forbidden land that the giant clan protected. He was now the master of the ancient continent. After he had fused with the origin, he had all things of the continent projected in his mind. None of those areas could avoid his sensing. Shi Yang would be the first one know any warrior regardless of his profound realm or power, once he descended on this continent. Many holy lands of the original areas of the 10 clans had sunk underground or were sealed with many barriers and restriction. It would be tough for other people to search and access the place. However, it was easy to him. His soul consciousness had sensed the birthplace of the giant clan underground. It was a large area of stone buildings and palaces. He could even see statues of the giant ancestors. It was the homeland that the giants had protected with their history and inheritance. Na Shin's eyes brightened. Taking a deep breath, he smiled and nodded. Thank you. You helped us save a lot of time and efforts. I want to thank you for your heavy gift. If you didn't give me so many divine crystals to break through, I couldn't have gotten through it safely, said Shi Yang honestly. With your innate endowment and competence, your future is immeasurable. Na Shin appraised. Then, he didn't say more. He just nodded to the giant clansman standing next to him. Let's go. We're going to the ancestral land. The giants agreed grumblingly, their faces thrilled as their giant bodies shook slightly. Members of the giant clan entered the space passage created by Shi Yang as guided. They started to move to the most mysterious land of their clan. After the last giant disappeared into the passage, Shi Yang arched his brows, asking Fei Lan. Fusing with the origin is just accommodating the soul, right? Could it be 2 souls coexisting? Fei Lan was baffled. She carefully remembered the legends. After a while, she spoke up. Never heard of such a strange phenomenon. Shi Yang's heart shivered. His face darkened, but he didn't say anything. He also knew it wasn't normal. Both Na Shin and Fei Lan's explained that once fusing with the origin, the soul would be merged perfectly with the origin. They would become one. But Shi Yang had 2 souls. His soul seemed to be split, and they seemed completely different. Since Na Shin and Fei Lan were precursors with profound knowledge, if they didn't know it, Shi Yang was afraid that the others couldn't. This planted a seed of anxiety in his heart. However, when he circulated his soul altar, he found nothing wrong with the 2 souls. They had even supported each other, and Shi Yang didn't feel anything annoyed. Between the 2 souls, his original soul was in charge of everything as if it was the host soul. It controlled the god body and all powers, urging the powers Upanishad. The ball-shaped soul could urge and use the powers of the heaven flames. It was familiar with all abilities of the 10 heaven flames. His thoughts moved, and the icy, scorching auras could perform naturally and strongly. The fountain of these energies stayed deep in his soul. It didn't need the other energies in his body. The heaven flame tier in the soul altar had the auras of 10 heaven flames. Just like the powers Upanishad, they were interlinked with his soul. The abilities and energy of the heaven flames in the heaven flame tier could run into the sea of consciousness and expand to the entire body from there. He could activate them in any minute. Shi Yang sensed carefully for a while. He found no conflict between the 2 souls. Although they were distinctive, they were actually matched without any gap. Currently, he found no abnormal signals or aftermath of the fusion. Although he was suspicious, before he could find an answer, he didn't want to explain it to everybody. Thus, he decided not to say anything. I think you will feel bored staying in this place. Smiling, he spoke to Fei Lan and the others. Give me a little time. After the giants have done their stuff, we will get back immediately, returning to that level 7 life star. Yeah, earth and heaven energy in this place are almost exhausted. Fei Lan nodded. After you fused with the origin, earth and heaven energy in this area had been running out faster. In several years, there will be no beam of energy left. This place isn't suitable to cultivate or understand realms. Everybody nodded. Shi Yang understood. He didn't say anything and just took a deep breath. Space energy fluctuated around him. He extended his arms, tearing the void. A new passage appeared by him, leading directly to the perpetual night forest in divine Great Land. He could vaguely see utmost 8 purgatory city at the end of the passage. In this archaic continent, his space power Upanishad wasn't limited. The abilities he couldn't use in other areas would be much easier here due to the origin. In the past, if he wanted to connect 2 areas in the Grace mainland, He must use the formation and some other materials. However, he directly carved the formation in the void using his soul consciousness with the energy supply from the magical energy fluctuation of the origin. He could simply and easily connect different areas. In the ancient continent, he was the master. With his understanding of space power, he could connect two poles of the continent as he pleased. However, this ability was only effective in the ancient continent. When he wasn't in this area, this ability wouldn't work. Moving like an electric rainbow, he entered the passage. After a flash, he appeared inside Utmost Purgatory's city. Many warriors had realized the passage in the void. They lifted their faces to observe. Seeing him emerging, they were all startled. Shi Yang. Yang couldn't help but shout. The youth of the Yang family, including Yang Shui, Li Feng, and Yang Meng, were perplexed to see him. They were astounded discreetly. Dage, Shi Yang smiled, talking right after he landed. How is your preparation? Almost done, Yang Mu answered and took a step forward to hug him. He didn't know why he suddenly felt uneasy. Shi Yang was very different, while Yang Mu had just the sky realm. Because of the big gap between their realms, he felt a little bit embarrassed. Chapter 908, Her News. Chapter 908, Her News. Shi Yang smiled brightly, walking forward to hug him back. He laughed. Dage, don't mind it too much. When we arrive in the new place, with your talent and realm, you will advance quickly. I know many pellets and magical inheritance. I'm sure you won't be disappointed. You didn't change. Haha, you didn't change even a bit. That's good. Yang Mu was happy. I was worried that you wouldn't want to accept such a useless Dage like me. Why? Shi Yang spoke to him honestly. When I was in trouble in the endless sea, you had crossed thousands of miles to rescue me. I will never forget your great kindness to me. Good brother. Yang Mu patted his shoulder. Then he cried in pain. Hey, is your body made of iron? Currently, Shi Yang was at the original God realm. The tenacious of his body wasn't something Yang Mu could imagine. He patted Shi Yang's shoulder, but Shi Yang didn't feel anything. On the contrary, Yang Mu felt like he had hit iron or steel. His hand felt numb, his mind blown away. Shaking his arm, Yang Mu forced a smile, sighing unceasingly. He knew that the gap between him and Shi Yang was like the sky and the abyss. Yang Mu was at Sky Realm. In Shi Yang's eyes, the eyes of an original God Realm expert, he wasn't different from a worm or an ant on the ground. Shi Yang just needed to raise his hand and he could kill many. You're so awesome. Yang Meng was terrified. Shi Yang chuckled. One day, you guys will have the same things. Moreover, I believe you don't need a long time to reach a profound realm. The Grace Mainland isn't suitable for you guys. When we come to another better world, you will see many unbelievable things, but you can touch them all. The level 7 life star where Na Shin lived had a lot of spiritual herbs on the ground. With alchemist Jester's support, they could refine many kinds of magical pellets. Staying in the exhausted Grace Mainland, they could reach such levels. That would be enough to prove their innate ability and competence. Once they had a richer arena, their breakthrough would occur faster and smoother. Long time no see, Shi Yang looked at the two girls in the ground, smiling brightly. Have you prepared to leave yet? They were He Qing Man and Chu Yang Qing. After many years, they still had the same beautiful makeup. Their bodies were charming and stunning and their faces were like the blooming flowers. Almost done, Chu Yang Qing smiled. It's good to see you again. Have you ever met Xin Yang Jejie? He Qing Man studied him, contemplating for a while and then asking weakly. Shi Yang frowned. A gleam of sadness crossed his eyes. No, I haven't heard from her for so many years. Shi Yang's heart was very soft for Xia Xinyang. When he left Grace Mainland that year, they had lost the connection. He knew that she was still alive, but he didn't know where she was. As He Qing Man said so, he suddenly realized that he should go to that hidden domain to check. Perhaps he could find something. In that year, his realm wasn't enough and his knowledge of space power wasn't as profound as it is now. Also, he had many important things to shoulder. He didn't dare to risk his life searching her. However, he thought his chance had finally come today. Xin Yang went through many hardships for you, though. When she came to the endless sea with you, she had done as much as she could for you. He Qing Man lowered her head, sighing. I know. After I'm done with matters here, I'm going to find her. Don't worry, Shi Yang nodded, his face touched. It's true. When he had nothing with him, he had Xia Xin Yang. They had befriended and went to the endless sea together. Through many adventures, this girl had borne a lot of things because of him. Yang Tian Emperor, Long Zhu, and Yun Hao came after they had seen the passage. They were all excited, satisfied, and full of wishes for the new life. I've opened the passage. When you're done, you can get in at any time. I've arranged the other side too. Nothing unexpected, explained Shi Yang with a smile. All right, we're almost done, Long Zhu nodded, his face cheerful. I want to help more people, Shi Yang explained reluctantly. I'll see you guys at the entrance. Then, he left. Shortly after, his aura disappeared as if he had directly merged himself to earth and heaven. Shi Yang went to the gathering place of the demon clan. It was a misty grey area. He shouted, I bring you hope. Shi Yang appeared out of nowhere in the ancient corpse tomb, speaking to Corpse Mount and Corpse Sea, the masters of the corpse clan now. Follow me. We're going to leave this continent. It's no longer suitable for you guys. He found the remaining members of the Ghost Mark clan in the shady firmament old mound. He said the same thing. This place is no longer suitable for your cultivation. I've found you guys a new place. Deep under the endless sea, Shi Yang directly talked to the chiefs of the tribes of the Sea Clan. He said the same thing. I bring you new hope. Among the 10 clans from the ancient times, Shi Yang had visited the Demon Clan, the Monster Clan, the Ghostmark Clan, the Dark Clan, the Corpse Clan, and the Sea Clan, all the clans except for the God Clan that had disappeared and the Dark Spirit Clan which got eradicated. He created a passage connecting to the cold wind island of the endless sea. He brought them new hope. Energy in the Grace mainland was about to empty out. If the warriors stayed here, their energy would be drained out gradually, leading to their deaths. After receiving the origin, his point of view changed completely. The clans he used to think that should be swept over were now parts of the continent in his eyes. The origin had given birth to them. As he had fused with the origin, it was his responsibility to find them a way to survive. Kunter was dead. The Dark Spirit Clan was uprooted. Now, Corpse Mount and Corpse Sea ruled Corpse Clan. Shi Yang had lost his interest in taking revenge to the Ghost Mark Clan since Zenith was also dead. The Monster Clan, the Dark Clan, and the Demon Clan didn't have any hotshots worth his intention. After he showed off his power, he had encountered no resistance. All clans understood the situation of the continent well. When he told them that he wanted to take them out of this place, no one opposed it. All thanked him for his favor. The 7 remaining clans included the Demon Clan, Monster Clan, Dark Clan, Ghostmark Clan, Corpse Clan, Sea Clan, and Human Clan. All of their members had received Shi Yang's favor of having a chance to leave this continent. Passages appeared above the Cold Wind Island, connecting many places of the Grace mainland. Clansmen of different races followed their leaders, crossing through the passage to gather in this island. With existences at high levels like Fei Lan and Leona, all the clansmen were as nice as the sheep. They cooperated well and followed their management. Of course, members of the clans were scattered around the continent. It took a lot of time to gather them. After Shi Yang had created the passages for the clans, he left by himself to go to the Ice and Fire secret domain. He stood in front of that chaotic space, frowning and looking at bunches of light shooting disorderly. He urged the soul consciousness to check. His soul consciousness moved like a bunch of light piercing through the place, trying to use the mysterious ability of the immortal demon blood to find Xia Xin Yang. After a while, a beam of his soul consciousness was stopped by a thick space barrier. No matter how hard he had tried, he couldn't get through it. Frowning, he tried to release more energy to attack that barrier. However, he found that it was really tough. With his cultivation base of the original God realm, his current powers, and his perception of space power Upanishad, he still couldn't get through the barrier. It was obvious that this barrier was formed recently. It seemed like someone had sealed the place. This barrier looked like the closed border between the raging flame star area and Na Shin's star area. It seemed like only the hollow channel could connect them. With his cultivation base of the original God realm and his current powers, he couldn't create the hollow channel under the given circumstances since he knew nothing about the other star area. He didn't have that ability yet. However, he knew one thing. He knew that the area behind that barrier should be another star area, another world. It might be close to Grace Mainland or pretty far away. If his immortal demon area couldn't seep through that barrier, it was possible that it was a star area far, far away. Vaguely, he felt Xia Xinyang was still alive. But he couldn't trace her location, her thoughts, and soul energy fluctuation. After several attempts, he reluctantly gave up and returned to the cold wind island dispirited. Na Xin and the clansmen of the giant tribe had come back. They looked excited as if they got a big harvest. What happened? Seeing Shi Yang have a bad mood, Na Xin asked deliberately, "Is there anything you couldn't do in Grace Mainland with your competence now? I wanted to find a person. Unfortunately, I got nothing," Shi Yang sighed. "My soul consciousness can't pierce through the barrier because it could lead to another star area. Sigh. I don't know when I will get a chance to see her again. Where is it? Can you take me there to check?" Na Xin was curious. Shi Yang was surprised. He nodded as he spoke to him. "Follow me." Shortly afterward, Shi Yang and Na Xin appeared in the Ice and Fire secret domain. He led the giant to that chaotic space, pointing at the passage with many beams of shooting light. There. Na Xin observed for a while, releasing his soul consciousness to sense for something. After a long time, Na Xin's eyes brightened. He looked very shocked, speaking to Shi Yang. "That space barrier has the aura of the shadow ghostly prison, which is dark and gloomy. It gives the soul shadows of ghosts as if we're in hell. I'm sure it's the shadow ghostly prison." Shi Yang's eyes were sharp as he hissed. "Shadow ghostly prison? Where is it?" "A mysterious area in our agate star area. I heard that it has a shattered hollow channel and a hollow flood current that is sealed. It used to be the space gate hub of the agate star area." Na Xin took a deep breath, speaking seriously. "If the one you are looking for has crossed the chaotic space current in this area, that one should be in our agate star area if nothing unexpected happened. Perhaps you know that not only our giants had pursued the God clan that year. Many other clans of Grace Mainland have come and lived in the agate star area like us. Perhaps they have found the line connecting to the ancient continent in the shadow ghostly prison of the agate star area." "Ah." Shi Yang was stunned. "Are you saying that the one I'm looking for is in the agate star area? The star area that we are about to go to? If nothing's wrong with my sensing abilities, it should be like that." Na Xin nodded to confirm his presumption. Shi Yang was completely shocked. Chapter 909, A Great Migration. Chapter 909, A Great Migration. When the last batch of the lowest realm warriors got through the ethereal extent and landed on the level 7 life star, the Great Migration of the Grace Mainland's residents finally ended. Old Orchid Star was the name of this level 7 life star, where dwelled the giant tribe. Shi Yang, Fei Lan, Leona, and the giant joined hands to cast complex barriers and formations by the lake near the foot of the mountain, which reduced the gravity by 200 times to help the newcomers adapt to the environment here. Old Orchid Star had a tremendous gravity, much more than the Grace Mainland. Even true God Realm warriors found it hard to get used to his place, panting while walking. If they didn't set up another destination, which had adjusted gravity, for the warriors lower than Sky Realm, the warriors wouldn't even be able to stand. They could only crouch on the ground and do nothing. Only warriors at the King God Realm could move freely in the Old Orchid Star. However, even they couldn't fly. Warriors from the Grace Mainland came from different races. There were dozens of thousands of them, and most of them had low realms, around Nascent Realm or Disaster Realm. After they arrived, they were taken to the new rest stop, which saved them from being crushed by the massive gravity. Life stars with such formidable gravity were really rare in the agate star area. It might be because of this reason that many strong clans couldn't stay in this life star, leaving the giant tribe live in peace until now. Shi Yang had a better knowledge of the agate thanks to Na Xin. Na Xin said that the agate star area was immensely vast, with countless life stars at different levels. It had around 100 level 7 life stars, and perhaps thousands or even dozens of thousands of level 6 life stars. Mineral stars, dead stars, solar stars, and lunar stars were like sand or gravel by the sea, scattered along the whole star area. This place didn't have only the races they knew about. Besides the Demon Clan, Dark Clan, Monster Clan, Dark Spirit Clan, Ghostmark Clan, Sea Clan, and Human Clan, there were more living in different corners of the star area. They could find the clans who had existed in the antiquity time of the Grace mainland in the Agate star area, including the God Clan. However, this clan wasn't welcome in this star area. Many clans were hostile towards this clan. Perhaps, it was the reason why the members of the God Clan in the Agate star area were so little. Once they appeared, they could be hunted down immediately. Clearly, the Agate star area wasn't a paradise for the God Clan, where the other big clans hated them a lot. This new star area had around 100 different races. Some were extremely intimidating, while the others were weak and fragile. Some had even gone extinct. The Agate star area was a real big hodgepodge of races. There were Fire Clan, Ice Clan, Wood Clan, Crystal Clan, Wind Clan, etc. were all living in this star area. Many of them were so peculiar that they were beyond Shi Yang's perception of this world. Taking the Fire Clan as an example, this race lived only on the solar stars. All members of the Fire Clan cultivated the scorching power, and a flame was always burning on their body, making them magical and extraordinary. Most of the solar stars of the Agate star area were controlled by the Fire Clan. This clan even had the power to block the flaming energy of the solar star, saving the energy for their clansmen's cultivation. The Ice Clan was totally opposite to them. They lived in the extremely cold areas. They were born and lived in the glacier. The clansmen of this race had a unique body structure, and they only cultivated icy power. And then there was the Wood Clan. Rumors said that they were born from an ancient holy tree. They had a wooden body, with real wood texture on it. Clansmen of the Wood Clan knew how to use wood power Upanishad from the day they were born, and they could use only the wood power. They were the indulged children of the woods, the master of the woods. They lived in the forest, with towering ancient trees as their homes. Another example was the Crystal Clan. Their god body was a crystal, as if they were cut and engraved by different colored crystals. They were infinitely magnificent, with brilliant, marvelous light. This star area had more amazing yet bizarre clans, living in different areas. They all had their own life stars and territories. Almost 100 clans were scattered around this immensely vast star area, living on countless life stars, and owning a large number of mineral stars, dead stars, solar stars, and lunar stars. Together with the other mysterious and perilous lands, they created this high-level life star called Agate Star Area. Na Xin's introduction had scared many warriors, including Fei Lan, Leona, and the warriors from the Raging Flame Star Area. They were surprised a lot because of the profundities of the Agate Star Area. Before they came here, who could have ever imagined such a strange star area? How could it have almost 100 extraordinary races like that? You guys can live here. This old orchid star is our giant's territory at the moment. This star doesn't have many natural resources, but I think it's enough for you. Na Xin walked to the lake, looking at the warriors who came from his ancestral land while talking seriously. You can collect all the materials in the old orchid star, we won't mind it. The old orchid star has many regions we haven't explored and exploited yet. You guys can work on it later. Does the old orchid star have a divine crystal mine? Asked Ka Tuor. Starting from the King God realm, divine crystals became the main items they used to restore their energy. It was also the currency in the Raging Flame Star area. The divine crystals could be absorbed and turned into different kinds of energy, suitable for warriors of different races. With this characteristic, the divine crystal was popular in any star area, because it was the main assurance for the warrior's cultivation. No, it doesn't, Na Xin shook his head, explaining, at least, we haven't found one. Pausing for a while, Na Xin added, the old orchid star's a little bit strange. The gravity will become more dangerous deep underground. Experts of our giant tribe can't endure it more than 1,000 meters underground. However, our precursor used to say that there should be something special under the ground of the old orchid star, especially with the fact that there are more spiritual herbs there. If you're interested in it, you can try. Shin smiled, but his eyes didn't. Tuor was surprised, rubbing his nose and talking awkwardly. Never mind, never mind. If you guys don't dare to explore, it will be impossible for us. Shin was at the ethereal god realm, and his realm was higher than Fei Lan. Perhaps, he was at the second of the ethereal god realm. If this existence didn't dare to explore the underground, who could? Fei Lan? Leona? Or Shi Yang? Tuor forced a smile. Your realms were low, and your knowledge of power Upanishad is shallow. I think it will not be easy for you to live on the surface of the old orchid star. You shouldn't take any risks. Shin kindly reminded them. Everybody was reluctant as they nodded, knowing that he just told the truth. I think you need to build a city first. Shin pointed at an area. There are a lot of good rocks over there. They should be suitable for your city. Yeah, if you need help, I can send 2 giants to transport the rock for you. It's to pay tribute to Shi Yang, for his help in finding our ancestral land. Thank you, Precursor. Shi Yang slightly bent over while smiling. Then, we will do it. The gravity in the old orchid star was scary. In this place, even the ordinary fantasy sky rings were affected. They couldn't contain heavy objects anymore. The giants were tall, and were used to the gravity in this area. There was nothing more suitable than them to transport the heavy rocks. I will arrange it. You just need to assign someone to go with us and show what kind of rocks you want. Shin was generous, frankly calling his clansmen. Shortly, 2 brawny men of the giant clan ran towards them from the big mountain. You guys stay here and help our friends to transport some rocks. Just follow them. Shin advised his fellows, then smiled. Our guests here come from pretty far. They will stay with us in the old orchid star, near our mountain. They will be our friends, our neighbors. We will get along well with them. We got it, tribal oldie. The 2 giants looked nice and friendly. They were all at the original god realm. They had agreed with their elder without a bit of hesitation. You guys will be busy for a while, so I won't disturb you anymore. Shin smiled and nodded to Shi Yang, then excused himself, walking back to his big mountain. Who will go with us? A muscular giant shouted. His voice was like the thunderclaps striking people's eardrums. Many lower realm warriors tumbled, falling because of his loud voice. They were all perplexed. The 2 giants were at the original god realm. While they were talking, their bodies emitted an intimidating aura. Disaster realm warriors in Shi Yang's side couldn't endure such pressure. Are there any blacksmiths? Who knows about the special stone materials? Step forward. Shi Yang turned around and shouted. Although I'm an alchemist, I know stone materials. Count me. Jester smiled until his eyes narrowed. He took part in the responsibility on his own initiative. Anybody else? Shi Yang asked again. There were blacksmiths among the warriors came from the Grace mainland. However, since their realms were low, they were inferior to Jester, a high-level existence. They didn't have the guts to show themselves. Aren't you a blacksmith? Zi Yarrow was surprised. Yes, I am. But, I'm not familiar with rock materials. Shi Yang smiled. His eyes narrowed as he looked at the clansmen from the Grace mainland. Don't worry about realms. You guys will show which rock materials are suitable to build the city. Whoever works in this field, step out some. With his encouragement, an old human at the Nirvana realm gritted his teeth, walking out of the crowd with his face worried. Sir, I'm a blacksmith. Although my realm isn't high, I've got an ancient book with great information of rock and stone materials. All right, you're in. Anybody else? Shi Yang nodded. Hesitating for a while, he added, I will give magical pellets as a reward to you. Many people looked touched. They seemed excited, but none of them volunteered. It looked like they weren't confident at all. Shi Yang waited for a while, but he got no one else. He sighed begrudgingly, talking to the giants, only 3 of us. Let's go. Come, Climb on our shoulders." The two muscular giants squatted down to let Shi Yang, Jester, and that old man get on their shoulders. Then, they strode and ran, making the earth rumble. Chapter 910, 1000 Miles Underground. Chapter 910, 1000 Miles Underground. The two brawny giants strode fast as if they were flying. Small trees rattled along their way, sending leaves everywhere. Shi Yang's group sat on the shoulder of the giants. Looking at the trees collapse like grass under their feet, they somehow felt magical. The old man was called Li Xiao. He was only at the Nirvana realm. Under the extreme gravity and the bumpy journey, he paled, his eyes so worried. After a while, when the giants stopped, the old man couldn't hold it anymore and began vomiting. Swoosh! Shi Yang lifted Li Xiao and landed in the middle of a crushed stone area. Li Xiao bent his body and threw up, his face ashen. Although he was at the Nirvana realm, he hadn't adapted to the gravity of the old orchid star yet. He staggered, his legs shaking as if he were carrying a whole mountain on his back. This was a mine around several hundred mu of land, with many collapsed mountains and chips of rock. One of the muscular giants spoke, his voice sounding like a thunderclap. "This is our quarry we use to build houses. You guys can choose whatever you want." Li Xiao was shaken as he spurted out blood under such pressure. He looked so unwell. Shi Yang forced a smile, shaking his head. He raised his hand, releasing a brilliant starlight that covered Li Xiao entirely. Li Xiao was shrouded in the starlight, which separated him from the extreme gravity and the thundering voice. He finally got some color back on his face. Jester frowned, throwing him a pellet. "Swallow it." Li Xiao was baffled, looking at Shi Yang. "Eat it. He won't harm you." Shi Yang nodded and smiled. Only then did Li Xiao take the pellet. Immediately, a flow of medicinal efficacy, which he considered immense, diffused in his body. The damage done to his body was healed rapidly, as his face started glowing with health. Shortly after, he became full of spirit. Li Xiao checked his condition for a while. He was thrilled, kneeling and bowing to Jester, continually thanking him. To Jester, the lowest level pellet he refined was at least a level 6 or 7 sacred grade. As Li Xiao was only at the Nirvana realm, that pellet was a priceless treasure to his cultivation. He could feel his energy leap up several times with only a pellet Jester had just given him. The contaminants and dregs on his body were also filtered. With the power of this pellet, it was possible to break through one level. Of course, he was thrilled. Shi Yang didn't mind the old man, smiling at a giant. "What kind of stone material do you use? How to know it's suitable for your houses?" "Simple." A muscular giant grinned, talking, "We hit it. The one that can resist to the last minute under the powerful pressure is the toughest one, and the most suitable material." "Oh, really simple," Shi Yang smiled frankly. However, inwardly, he didn't dare to agree with the giant. Shi Yang could consider himself an average blacksmith. He had a good knowledge of blacksmithing anyway. The giant's method to choose the material, to people who didn't know how to refine items, was effective indeed. However, different kinds of materials could be fused or blended with each other. In many cases, weak stone materials could become tougher and better quality material after being refined, even dozens of times more rigid. As they knew the refining methods, the crude method of the giants was simple indeed. Alchemist Jester frowned, seeming to be a little bit disdainful. If it were that simple, there would be no alchemist or blacksmith in this world. If it were so, would the weapon made of the toughest material be the most dangerous one? It's not that simple. The giant wasn't enraged. He just laughed foolishly. "Our tribe doesn't know these things. Also, we don't pay much attention to it. We've done things that way for years." "Yeah, we knew that the blacksmiths could refine and forge materials into powerful weapons. But, my tribe doesn't have a blacksmith." Listening to him, Jester and Shi Yang couldn't comment anything else. "You guys watch around. When you see the stone you like, call us." One of the two giants told them, then sat down leisurely by a pile of stone. He dozed off, his face satisfied. Shi Yang smiled and said nothing more. He turned to Jester and Li Xiao. We should scatter and find the materials. The stone material is the foundation we will build our city with. It'll guarantee our future home and homeland. I hope you guys would choose wisely. I will do my best. Li Xiao took a deep breath, his face stern. He walked towards the area filled with crushed stones. Jester also looked serious while his eyes sparkled continually. He took out a yellowed old book, carefully checking for something. It seemed that he didn't actually know about types and structures of stone materials. Since he had a good source to refer, he got his confidence. Although Li Xiao had a low realm, and he wasn't worth mentioning in Shi Yang and Jester's eyes, he had special knowledge of stone materials. Unlike Jester, who was using a book, he was knocking and sometimes pounding on the stone, releasing a wisp of energy to sense. Sometimes he frowned, and at times he smiled. The style of a master. Shi Yang observed Li Xiao for a while and gradually eased his mind, thinking that this man could perhaps give him happy surprises. Shi Yang didn't know much about materials to build a city. He was good at choosing materials for forging treasures or weapons. The blacksmith's secrets of success mainly mentioned those materials. That was why he brought Li Xiao and Jester here to help him choose. Although the Agate Star area was vast, and the old Orchid Star was the exclusive land of the giant tribe, it wasn't safe. Otherwise, the giant tribe wouldn't need to set up layers of barriers outside the mountain. This meant that old Orchid Star used to be invaded. Someone had targeted the giant tribe. This immense star area had almost 100 clans, with countless intimidating existences scattering everywhere. Shi Yang's fellows were just some low-realm outsiders, their competence limited. If they could have a tough city, it would be a good advantage to their future development. With this thought, he was earnest about choosing the materials for the city. He neither watched Jester and Li Xiao nor talked to the two giants, just frowned while walking in the quarry and releasing his soul consciousness to sense something. Since his soul consciousness had space power, although his realm wasn't high, the coverage of his soul consciousness was larger and deeper than the other warriors with higher realms. Space power Upanishad had such ability. Flows of his soul consciousness shot out like shuttles. Shi Yang had now more eyes, observing the entire area around him. Ah! After a long time, he sighed, his eyebrows twitching. He silently flew to the center of the quarry. With his power at the original God realm, he couldn't travel 1,000 miles in just a blink under the tremendous gravity of the old Orchid Star. He was slowed down a lot. He got to his target after 15 minutes. Standing in the center of the three collapsed mines was a massive chasm, so deep that people couldn't see its bottom. It seemed to run to the deepest place underground. A beam of his soul consciousness moved to that pitch-black hole. However, when his soul consciousness reached to an extremely deep place, he felt a wisp of an extraordinary energy. It seemed to be some kind of a crystal. It was like crystal rock or some special iron. It felt so wonderful. The old Orchid Star was odd with its tremendous gravity, indeed. But the gravity at the star surface wasn't the heaviest on this star. The deeper one went underground, the heavier the gravity got. Even the experts of the giant tribe didn't dare to linger, or else, they would get their god body crushed. However, there would be something magical in the earth of the old Orchid Star as it could produce more excellent spiritual herbs. If the warriors could resist the terrifying gravity, they could have a chance to search. Shi Yang suddenly recalled what Na Xin had told him, and his eyes brightened silently. Taking a deep breath, he released more beams of soul consciousness. He then condensed the wisps of his soul consciousness into one big beam, which was purer and sharper. Of course, it could pierce the layers of soil faster. A flow of combined soul consciousness slowly intruded the gloomy, massive pit like an arrow. Shortly, the magical feeling became more intense. Boom! His sea of consciousness was shaken, as beams of soul consciousness in his sea of consciousness also trembled. This wonderful feeling multiplied by 100 times. It was like there were tens of thousands pieces of the same material, as many as the stars in the sky, inlaid in the bottom of the pit. It was some special matter that could resonate with the sea of consciousness, making his soul consciousness dart fast like an electric arrow. A flow of soul consciousness was constantly surging in response, which seethed his sea of consciousness and shook the soul altar. Shi Yang was frightened. He hastened to retrieve his soul consciousness, his face turning strange. Pondering for a while, Shi Yang found that his beam of soul consciousness had pierced more than 1,000 meters into the ground. Even Na Shin couldn't reach this depth for sure. Since Na Shin didn't have the space power, and although his soul consciousness could cover a large area, his elongated soul consciousness was limited. It couldn't get deep into the earth like Shi Yang's. Contemplating for a while, he decided to find someone to ask. He wanted to tell about the magical changes of his soul consciousness, so that the others could guess about the situation. He came to where the two giants were resting. Hesitating for a while, he asked frankly, "I've just found a dark hole leading to a deep place underground. A beam of my soul consciousness felt something wonderful down there." He explained to them how his sea of consciousness reacted to that energy fluctuation of some matter underground. The two giants listened to him. When he told them how his sea of consciousness surged, they jolted up. Light shot out marvelously from their eyes up into the sky. Shi Yang was shaken as he lowered his voice, asking, "Is there something strange?" The other two seemed to not being able to hear him. They were so excited that their body shaking. Two muscular giants exchanged looks. They didn't hesitate, running towards the grand mountain of their tribe while thundering, "Tribal oldie, tribal oldie. Our old orchid star does have that thing. The rumor's real." Shi Yang was perplexed. Chapter 911, Thousandfold Lotus. Chapter 911, Thousandfold Lotus. Shi Yang didn't know why the two giants were so excited, as if they were about to go crazy. However, he could confirm one thing. The thing that could resonate with his sea of consciousness must be extremely marvelous. Jester and Li Xiao also heard the giants' earth-shaking call. They were astounded for a while, then got back to their work of sensing the stone materials. They didn't pay much attention to them. Shi Yang hesitated for a while, then returned to that gloomy, passive pit, waiting in silence. After 2 hours, he was dumbstruck. Clansmen of the giants emerged from the mountain, led by their tribal oldie, Na Shin. He took a dozen brawny giants, running at their max speed towards Shi Yang. They looked so happy that they couldn't hide it. Shortly, the giants arrived, looking at him with complicated eyes. Na Shin's voice trembled as if he wanted to confirm something, but he was afraid it would only disappoint him. "Little Yang, did you find something underground within 1,000 li that could resonate with your sea of consciousness?" "Are you sure?" "I'm sure," Shi Yang nodded, asking curiously, "But, what is that?" "Ha ha ha. Turns out it's real. The rumor's true. Rich. We're going to be rich. So good. With that thing, we can exchange for many goods. It's a big surprise, it is. Shi Yang's our lucky charm. He took us to ancestral land, and we found the ancient inheritance there. Now, he found that thing. He's the lucky charm of our giant tribe. A real lucky charm. True. He's our best friend. Best friend forever." Soldiers of the giant tribe looked at him, expressing their most sincere affection. Na Shin was trembling in thrill. He was filled with excitement, laughing unceasingly. "What is it?" asked Shi Yang again after waiting for them to finish their happy time. "Thousandfold Lotus," Na Shin said resolutely. "It must be the thousandfold lotus. If it can resonate with the sea of consciousness, no doubt it's the thousandfold lotus." "Ouch, please elaborate," Shi Yang forced a smile. Taking a deep breath, Na Shin said, "There's a rumor about the old orchid star, which says that the star has the thousandfold lotus. They say that some experts had found it in the original God realm. However, we, the giant tribe, had never seen it before. Many people have come here to find. Anyway, they got nothing. Gradually, people stopped keeping an eye on this star anymore." Pausing for a while, Na Shin laughed. "If they knew the thousandfold lotus is actually in the old orchid star, they would regret to death. They would regret that they had eyes but couldn't see. They came to the right place, but they didn't take the precious treasure. Ha ha. It must belong to our giant tribe, our fortune that no one can take away." Shi Yang still knew nothing, looking at him begrudgingly. "After all, what's it? What's it good for? You've cultivated space power. Your soul consciousness has space power, which is why you could send your soul consciousness more than 1,000 li underground. I should have thought about this. Na Shin didn't explain, talking to his fellows. Even the peak of ethereal god realm experts can't send their soul consciousness 1,000 li underground. It's because the gravity in that area is thousandfold stronger than on the surface of the star. Ethereal god realm experts can't do that, let alone entering the area. No wonder why they couldn't locate it. Of course, they had searched for it on the surface. It's impossible to find the thousand-fold lotus. It's deeply subterranean, said a giant with his good mood. Na Shin put on a serious countenance, explaining Shi Yang, the thousand-fold lotus is a material of the original incipient grade. It can be used to refine pellets and weapons at the original incipient grade. It's the rarest item among the strange and precious items that could give a tonic to the soul altar. It's the top precious treasure, indeed. Original incipient grade? Shi Yang was surprised. You don't know about it. Na Shin was skeptical. Shi Yang shook his head. Spiritual pellets, medicines, cultivating materials, treasures, alchemists, and blacksmiths are categorized into grades. Each grade has 7 levels. They are mortal grade, mystery grade, spirit grade, sacred grade, divine grade, and original incipient grade, where the original incipient grade is the top one. You didn't know this? Na Shin was surprised. Shi Yang beamed a forced smile. I've told you, my knowledge is shallow. The ancestral homeland has existed for millions of years, using up energy. It's a really long time since we had a last king god realm warrior. Of course. I don't know much. As it turned out, there was the original incipient grade above divine grade. It was indeed true that the higher level star area had higher level existences. Original incipient grade pellets, treasures, and materials in the agate star area are also extreme. They are all the most marvelous treasures. The thousand-fold lotus is an original incipient grade material. We can use it to refine soul class treasure, or original incipient grade pellets that could boost the soul altar. Na Shin took a deep breath. The thousand-fold lotus has its sets of petal piling up on each other. It looks like a wave expanding outward continually. They connect to each other too. After the flower has 1,000 sets of corollas, it's considered mature, becoming the thousand-fold lotus. The thousand-fold lotus can enlarge the sea of consciousness, refining the soul consciousness to the point that it can become a real, sharp object like a sword. Shi Yang was moved, and couldn't help but exclaim, awesome. In any inhabited area of a star area, materials or items that could nurture the soul would always be the top-selling items. If the thousand-fold lotus could expand the sea of consciousness and make the soul consciousness as refined as a real matter, it would absolutely be the top treasure. The thousand-fold lotus and the sea of consciousness have something in common. No one knows how it's formed to have layers of folds like that. It's marvelous and precious, indeed. Na Shin took a deep breath while smiling. The thousand-fold lotus is the rarest thing in the agate star area. Yeah, it's like this. A thousand-fold lotus can be compared to the value of a whole life star, at least a level 6 one. Of course, in many cases, even a level 6 life star couldn't be exchanged for a thousand-fold lotus. Shi Yang was thrilled. From Na Shin and the giant's excitement, Shi Yang could guess that the thousand-fold lotus was really precious. However, he had still mistaken its value. A thousand-fold lotus could be exchanged for at least a level 6 life star? What kind of logic was that? It was unimaginable. Can you certify how many lotuses are there? Na Shin asked seriously. 1 or 2 flowers, you think? Oh, I forgot to tell you that the thousand-fold lotus is huge. With 1,000 sets of corolla, it is at least 1 mu large. Can you return there and check out their number? Many giants were looking at him with hope in their eyes. Shi Yang nodded. Okay, I'll try. He condensed his soul consciousness, entering the deep place underground. He quieted down his mind to sense. After a while, his sea of consciousness resonated. He didn't hasten to retrieve the soul consciousness, continuing to explore. As Na Shin had told him, He identified the area and dimensions to certify the number of the lotus. The giants looked hopeful and excitedly. Their eyes were glued on him without blinking, while they were smiling like the blooming flowers. Shin was stirred up. He had to take several deep breaths to calm down his seething mind. The 1,000-fold lotus was critical. Each flower was a real fortune. To the giants who lived humbly and poorly, it was so important that nothing could compare with it. Anyway, it was not just the earth and heaven energy they depended on to cultivate. They had to use more materials, treasures, and pellets. The giants were poor in those terms. Besides the old orchid star, they didn't have much to exchange for the goods. Compared to other clans, they were inferior. If they had the 1,000-fold lotus, everything would be much easier. They could solve the troubles they had had for so many years. After a while, Yang retrieved his soul consciousness, looking at Shin. I feel like there are at least 20,000-fold lotuses. The giant clansmen cheered loudly, hugging and bumping each other's shoulder. They had shaken the mountainous area, sending rocks everywhere. Shin faced the sky and laughed crazily. However, his eyes were watery. God still favors us. Our time has finally come. Our soldiers can have better conditions for their cultivation. Ha ha ha. More than 10 giants were laughing and cheering, their voices shaking the sky. They were so happy they almost cried. Who can take them? Yang was surprised. After being baffled for a while, he asked. All members of the giant tribe were dumbstruck, darkening their faces. Shin was embarrassed, pulling himself together from his crazy happiness. He scratched his head, giving a forced smile. It's trouble. The gravity at the elevation of 1,000 li underground is also 1,000 times stronger. I don't dare to get underground that deep. Then what should we do? The treasure is down there but we can't take it out. Isn't it different from getting nothing? Damn it. God, are you kidding us? The heavenly treasures are down there but you guard it with a natural gravity shield. How can we get in there? Damn. Many clansmen were pounding their chest, stomping their feet as they were so enraged. If you can't get it, why don't you hire someone else to do it? Asked Yang. The giant clansmen quieted down, their countenance strange. No, Shin forced a smile, our giants are straightforward, but we aren't fools. If we can get the 1,000-fold lotuses, we won't sell them out under our name. We will do it through many brokers. If someone could spot that we have the 1,000-fold lotus in our land, we would have a lot of troubles. I'm afraid we won't be able to keep the old orchid star. We giants aren't really strong. We can't protect the old orchid star from invasion all the time. Listening to him, Yang sighed inwardly. What kind of existence could get 1,000 li underground? The legendary incipient god realm warriors. Shin suddenly felt displeased. We can count the incipient god realm experts in the agate star area with our fingers. They are hiding like ghosts in the mysterious lands, and don't go out often. Maybe they would go out after several hundred years. It's easy to hire those people to take the 1,000-fold lotus. However, if they want to rob us, I'm afraid. Yang became dumbstruck on listening to him. This old orchid star was marvelous. In this life star, only the incipient god realm warriors could get underground. So, the 1,000-fold lotuses were subterranean, but they had no option. They were sitting on the treasures but they couldn't take them. The giant clansmen frowned, stooping in distress. They felt so annoyed. Chapter 9:12, Myriad Weighty Stone. Chapter 9:12, Myriad Weighty Stone. Sir. Sir. Li Xiao's voice came from afar, sounding excited. The giants and Yang were all depressed because they couldn't dig up the 1,000-fold lotus. Hearing Li Xiao's voice, Yang frowned while contemplating. He decided not to overthink about the 1,000-fold lotus at the moment, walking towards Li Xiao. Shin and the giant soldiers surrounded the massive pit with a worried frown. They didn't mind Li Xiao much, because they were busy figuring out how to obtain the 1,000-fold lotus. Crossing several li, Yang walked to Li Xiao while frowning. What's happened? I found something. Li Xiao was cheered up, pointing at a dark stone by his feet. Myriad weighty stone. It's the myriad weighty stone. That stone was ink black, around fist-sized. It wasn't eye-catching, mingling with the other stones in the pile. It didn't look odd or have any beam of energy. Shi Yang was surprised. Is that stone suitable for building the city? Sir, if you don't mind, please pick it up, Li Xiao smiled. As Shi Yang was skeptical, he reached and grabbed the myriad weighty stone, releasing his energy while trying to pull it up. Hey! Shi Yang changed his visage. At his realm, when he released energy, it was enough to pick up a small-sized mountain. However, that fist-sized stone didn't move even inch. Shi Yang's interest arose. He walked to the stone and didn't draw it into the void using energy anymore. He extended his hand, touching that myriad weighty stone. It felt firm and cold in his hand, but there was nothing else special about it. However, when he tried to lift up the rock, his face changed. Heavy. Too heavy. It was just a small rock, but it was as heavy as a small mountain. Shi Yang had to use his essence qi to lift it up. His arm shook as he hardly endured it. Shi Yang's eyes brightened up. That stone's too heavy. Li Xiao nodded continually, looking strangely happy. The myriad weighty stone is extremely heavy. In a normal situation, it's thousands of times heavier than the rock of the same volume. This fist-sized myriad weighty stone can compare to a small mountain. Shi Yang was shocked. It's strange, indeed. Can we use it to build the city? The best material to build the city. It's tough enough to resist almost all kinds of attacks. It's immune to weapons, strong impacts, fire, or water. It's the top stone material to build a city. Li Xiao stressed on the stone's features. All right. Shi Yang was excited. Where did you find this myriad weighty stone? How much of it can we collect? The smile on Li Xiao's face faded. I found only that stone. I've checked around, but I couldn't find more. I don't know where it's from. Shi Yang was surprised, pondering for a while, then said, there should be more around. We'll scatter and search then. Okay, Li Xiao was really excited. He immediately moved towards another stone pile, trying to find more myriad weighty stone. The two of them then focused on searching for more stones. They forgot the time, just raking through the stone quarry and checking each pile of stones. After waiting for Shi Yang for a long time but not seeing him come back, the giant clansman became curious. Na Xin contemplated, then took his fellows to search. Afterward, Jester also came to their area. Seeing Shi Yang and Li Xiao burying their heads into piles of stones, he couldn't help but ask skeptically, "What are you looking for?" Shi Yang turned to him. He had many crushed stones sticking on his face. He threw the stone in his hand to Jester. "This. Alchemist Jester, have a look and tell me if you're familiar with this kind of stone." Jester extended his hand to catch it. At the moment the myriad weighty stone fell into his hand, his body was blown backward. Half of his body was pressed into the ground, and he almost got his wrist strained. He was scared, screaming continually. "Oh mother f***, what the heck is this stone? How could it be so heavy? Oh damn. It's called myriad weighty stone. Alchemist Jester, you don't know about it." Shi Yang was surprised. Jester still had half of his body underground, forcing a smile while shaking his head. Never heard of it before. Shi Yang was bewildered, and couldn't help but look at Li Xiao. Now he knew that perhaps Alchemist Jester wasn't better than Li Xiao in terms of knowledge of stone materials. Although Li Xiao didn't have a high realm, his knowledge of stone materials wasn't shallow. We're trying to find that kind of stone. If we can find enough, it will be the main material to build our city. Alchemist Jester, please come and help us, Shi Yang smiled inaudibly. Jester was surprised, then nodded and smiled. That's good. I'm on it. Not long afterward, Na Xin took some brawny giants coming from afar. Seeing the strange operation of the other threes, he got suspicious. "Little Yang, what are you doing?" "Finding a stone material which is very weighty." Shi Yang pointed at Jester's. "That black stone on the ground is what we want to find. Have you ever seen it before?" Jester had put that myriad weighty stone on the ground. Na Xin jumped over there, touching the stone. He picked it up easily while hissing, "My, it's heavy." "Yeah, pretty heavy. We need this kind of stone to build the city. As you live in the old Orchid Star precursor, do you know any place has this kind of stone?" Shi Yang smiled and asked. Na Xin was a little bit embarrassed. "I don't pay much attention to these things." He turned around, hurling the myriad weighty stone to the giants coming with him. "Have a look at it. Do you know where to find this kind of stone?" The giant clansmen looked at the myriad weighty stone, shaking their heads while responding in negative. After a while, some other giants came. One of them was an ugly giant. As soon as he arrived, he screamed, "Tribal oldie, I know where to find this kind of stone." People had their eyes brightened. "Take us there," ordered Na Xin. That giant didn't say anything, striding in a direction. People followed him immediately. After 2 hours, the giant led them to a 1,000 meters high bleak and barren mountain. However, when they approached the mountain, they found that the gravity in this area was even several hundred times stronger. Jester was hovering. However, when they arrived at this area, he fell onto the ground immediately, rushing into the pile of crushed stone in a sorry state. Shi Yang staggered for a while before he could steady his god body in the air. He didn't fall like Jester. "This mountain has the same kind of material. When I hunted near here, I used to see it," said the giant honestly. Shi Yang was moved. He didn't talk more, hauling the divine sword out at ND slashing the mountain. The surface rock of the mountain wasn't myriad weighty stone. It was just a typical one. When his divine sword slashed down, blocks of rock fell like tofu cubes. Clink clink. Digging dozens of meters deep into the mountain, the clinking noises of metal on metal echoed. The massive sword that was still working effortlessly met an obstacle for the first time. Shi Yang stepped forward while glancing, and couldn't help but smile. Indeed, inside the mountain is this very kind of material, the myriad weighty stone. People could see a dark area inside the cave Shi Yang had just dug up. The black stone had a deep scratch, which was left by the divine sword. The sharp divine sword that had cut the stone steles in the god-perishing land as easy as cutting tofu couldn't break the myriad weighty stone. Thus, it had proven how tough the myriad weighty stone was. Rattle, rattle, rattle. Shi Yang swung the sword, breaking the typical rock by the cave to enlarge it. After a long moment, the entrance of the cave was now dozens of meters large, enough for 2 giants to enter and check the special things inside. "It's the same stone material inside." Li Xiao stood in the distance, pondering for a while. He didn't dare to step forward as he just muttered. Shi Yang nodded, "It's true. The inside of this mountain is the myriad weighty stone. It should be enough for us to build the city. Too heavy. I'm afraid we can't move them out." Li Xiao forced a smile. "The amount of myriad weighty stone in this mountain is even heavier than a medium-sized life star. Perhaps, even the giant precursors can't move it." Na Xin nodded, talking seriously. "Based on the weight of that fist-sized stone, and with the entire inside of this mountain being made of it, we really can't move it. It is going to be too heavy. We don't have a solution." Shi Yang couldn't help but smile miserably. The 1,000-fold lotus was deep underground, so they couldn't touch it. And now, they found a special material to build the city that they couldn't move. He suddenly felt that God was playing with him. He could see them but couldn't touch. This was much harder to endure than not knowing anything. "I'll try to use space power to move it." Contemplating for a while, Shi Yang took a deep breath, making up his mind. He didn't want to leave empty-handed. Holding his breath and concentrating his mind, Shi Yang condensed beams of soul consciousness, seeping into the mountain made of myriad weighty stone. His soul consciousness found it difficult to move further. The myriad weighty stone was unique. His soul consciousness could pierce through the normal stone, but it felt like countless of ropes were tying it down when he attempted to pierce through the stone. He had to use a lot of soul energy. He didn't give it up, gritting his teeth to get through the stone. After a while, his brain was shaken, his face showing an expression like he had found something wonderful. His soul consciousness found something inside the myriad weighty stone mountain. It had thousands or even tens of thousands of thick lines. Those thumb-sized lines glowed brilliantly, spreading in the center of the mountain like a big spider web. Shi Yang could see them in every corner. Those glowing lines looked like a mysterious spiritual formation. However, that formation was shattered. Many thumb-sized lines were broken, which had stopped the energy circulation of that formation, making it incomplete. Retrieving his soul consciousness, Shi Yang's face was stern. He took a deep breath and then talked. There's a formation inside the mountain, but it's damaged. The giant clansmen were shocked, unable to believe what he had just told them. They'd been living in the old Orchid Star for so many years, but they had never found this magical area. No one had ever thought that their homeland could have something so wonderful. This information had them baffled. I can fix it, Shi Yang pondered for a while before speaking up again, causing everyone to have their eyes brightened. Chapter 9:13. Fix the Ancient Formation. Chapter 9:13. Fix the Ancient Formation. ___. The giant tribe had a lot of astonishments today. First, it was the thousand-fold lotus, then the myriad weighty stone, and now, they found the mysterious ancient formation. Was it true that the old Orchid Star used to have some great marvelous things? The giant tribe had lived in the old Orchid Star for tens of thousands of years. After that almost perpetual time, due to their limitation, they had explored the surface of the star several times, but still had never spotted anything magical before. Since Shi Yang cultivated space power and due its powerful piercing ability, plus his determination to reside in the old Orchid Star, he didn't save his energy, trying to search further. And with that, he indeed found many magical areas. This cheered up the giant tribe. To any person, knowing that his hometown had a treasure was a joyful thing. Of course, the giants weren't an exception. It was especially true because of the fact that the giant tribe was poor. They didn't have many precious materials. They always lived a humble, lean life. All of a sudden, discovering that they were actually sitting on a fortune had them totally thrilled. You can fix it. Really? People could even see how happy Shin was. It was all over his face as he excitedly walked forward, using one finger to pat Shi Yang on his shoulder. Good job. I know little Yang will be the lucky charm of our tribe. You didn't fail me. Xiao Man has brought you to our tribe. He's a good kid too. Haha. Many giants were so happy they couldn't hold it, their countenance bright and cheerful. I can use God power to connect the broken formation. Let me give it a try, Shi Yang sensed carefully, then said, I need more time. Haha, you can do it again and again. We have plenty of time. Time is the one thing we have in abundance. Shin was blooming with smiles. Jester and Li Xiao were also excited discreetly. They could confirm one thing. The old Orchid Star must have something marvelous. Otherwise, it wouldn't have had a mysterious, damaged formation inside this mountain. The formation meant that some living beings used to live or stay in the old Orchid Star a long time ago. The more ancient they were, the more profound would their realms, cultivation base, powers, and knowledge of this world be. If they could find something marvelous the ancient living beings left, it would be good news for the residents of the old Orchid Star. If the members of the different clans from the Raging Flame Star area and the Grace Mainland could have the support from the top treasure, they could stand firmly faster in the Agate Star area. Their lives would be much better. It was indeed an amazing opportunity. Closing his eyes and placing one hand on the ground while aiming at the pitch-black myriad weighty stone, Shi Yang continually condensed his soul consciousness, seeping underground towards the massive chunk inside the mountain. He had cultivated space power, so his soul consciousness also had space power, which made it the most amazing type of soul consciousness. That was why he could sense the areas the giants couldn't. Realms didn't matter here. It was all due to the different power Upanishad. Warriors cultivating space power were mysterious and rare in any star area after all. Condensing soul consciousness and sending it towards the chunk inside the mountain, the spider web formation was suddenly projected in his sea of consciousness. It looked complex and inexplicable, just like a star map. It was a 1,000 meters high mountain, so the chunk of the stone inside was extremely massive. The spiritual formation had tens of thousands of lines, spreading out everywhere and connecting with each other. Dozens of the lines were cut off by some power. However, the distances between them weren't too big. Shi Yang couldn't understand the profundity of the formation or simulate it. But fixing it couldn't trouble him anyway. Shi Yang could be considered an extraordinary blacksmith. He had studied all kinds of formations in the Blacksmith Secrets of Success, and had a special knowledge of fixing formations. With his soul consciousness as the connector, he coiled it around the two ends of the broken line. His space power seeping into the myriad weighty stone was suddenly activated its energy. A pure God power flowed like a spirit snake. Following the connection the soul consciousness had formed, it moved to the broken area. Seconds later, the God power started to slowly pull and glue the two ends. It wasn't really hard, anyway. Shortly, a swish sound reflected in his soul and the broken line was mended by his soul consciousness and God power. Shi Yang was cheered up, smiling. He didn't take a break, just focusing and continuing his mending work. He continually used his soul consciousness to find the broken point, then released the God power to connect them. Time flew fast. Shortly, 10 days had passed. The giants, Jester, and Li Xiao were still staying with him to guard and observe. Regarding this discovery, the giants were very cautious. Before they could confirm the situation, they all stayed. No one had left yet. Na Xin was the one who got the most nervous. He was tense, watching Shi Yang's operation as hope filled his heart. He hoped that Shi Yang could bring a positive change to his giant tribe, so they could live better in the Agate Star area. On this particular day, Shi Yang suddenly shivered. Sweat beaded on his forehead while his soul flickered unsteadily. Na Xin's group became nervous as if their hearts were hung on a thread, waiting for something. They knew the critical moment was coming. Boom! A series of strong gravity movements burst out from inside the mountain, and Shi Yang's god body was blown backward. The giants standing nearby the mountain discolored. They felt their body became so heavy that they had to stagger at each step. Instinctively, they stepped backward. Jester and Li Xiao were standing afar from this mountain. Still, they could feel the tremendous gravity, and had to retreat further. A beam of light blue light suddenly stretched to somewhere far away from the peak of the mountain. That light had the clear energy fluctuation of extremely terrifying gravity. Shi Yang was blown backward more than 1,000 meters by the shockwave. He hissed, "I'm done fixing it." Na Xin and the other giants were so happy they almost cracked. All of them looked at the light blue beam elongating to somewhere with astonishment. Some then started to fly in that direction. Shi Yang was surprised for a while, talking to Jester. "Bring Li Xiao. We're going there to see." Jester nodded, then grabbed the void to pick Li Xiao up. They also walked to the destination the light blue light was showing. Na Xin left shortly, looking so happy. After a long time, they gathered again by a new mountain, which was also a bleak and barren one. From all aspects, it was similar to the previous mountain Shi Yang had just fixed. However, the stone atop the mountain was broken, revealing a faint blue light. It was dim and flickering like a candle. The broken peak exposed the ink-black stone underneath. It was the myriad weighty stone again. Shi Yang was astonished. He used the giant sword to cut the mountain, digging a cave to enter the mountain. He was the first one jumping into the mountain. It's the same. This mountain also has myriad weighty stone. Shi Yang stood at the entrance of the cave, turning his head to talk to Na Xin. "I can see a shattered formation inside the mountain, too. It's pretty similar to the previous one." "Oh, it hasn't completed?" Na Xin was shocked. All of a sudden, he talked complacently, "It should have something wonderful. Shi Yang, put a little bit more effort, please. Fix that formation. I think after you've completed all the formations, the real power of the formations could be activated." All the members of the giant tribe put on a longing face, smiling until their eyes narrowed while looking at Shi Yang. "Ouch, I need to recover first." Shi Yang beamed a forced smile. "I've used a lot of energy. If you ask me to fix it now, I think I won't be able to do it." Jester pondered for a while, then talked to him generously. "Here. These pellets should be enough for you to recover fully and quickly." These 5-colored pellets had a sweet aroma, glowing brilliantly like jewels. Each of these pellets contained an extraordinary energy. They were all high-quality pellets Jester had refined. They were dozens of times better than the one he gave to Li Xiao. Shi Yang wasn't trying to be too polite. He grinned, then took all of the pellets, swallowing them straight up. Then, he sat down cross-legged by the entrance to adjust his energy. He hoped to recover his full energy at the fastest speed. 3 days later, Shi Yang opened his eyes. He looked bright and refreshed, with high spirit. Then, he continued to do his great repairing work. The mountain was the same. The myriad weighty stone inside was also the same, and the similar formation also had the same damage level as the previous formation. To Shi Yang, it was easier because he just needed to repeat what he had done. Gathering his spirit, he started to mend the broken formation, using his soul consciousness and the God power as the source of the connector to connect the broken lines. 7 days later, explosions reverberated inside the mountain. Another bunch of light blue light shot out to an area afar. As expected, they were just surprised for a while before dashing to where the bunch of light pointed. It was another mountain with the same broken formation carved inside the myriad weighty stone. Shi Yang needed to fix it, too. This time, he didn't need people to ask him to fix the formation. Shi Yang took Jester's pellets, then rested to recover his energy. Afterward, he continued fixing the shattered formation. After he had repaired this formation, the blue light pointed to another mountain. And it kept going like that. Shi Yang had to continually fix the broken formations inside the new mountains. 3 months had passed hurriedly. There were 16 mountains in total. They arrayed in a circle, as if they were surrounding something. They measured the area, finding that those 16 mountains circled the massive pit where the 1,000-fold lotuses were deep underground. This discovery cheered up all the giants. This is the 16th mountain, the last one. After Shi Yang's done with it, we will see the change. Na Xin's voice trembled. Perhaps, it's related to the 1,000-fold lotus. He licked his lips, talking seriously. Little Yang, you must help us. Standing by the last mountain, Shi Yang retracted his hands, smiling at the giant. Precursor, if we find something or get the 1,000-fold lotus, can we get a share of it? Equal share. Na Xin laughed straightforwardly. I know human clan is cunning, but I like you. No matter what we can get, we will share equally. How does it sound? I know you guys won't lie, Shi Yang grinned, talking frankly. All right. I'm going to fix this last damaged formation. He closed his eyes, concentrating on the last repair. Several days later, a deafening explosion came with a great shaking simultaneously from 16 mountains made of myriad weighty stone. Light bloomed from the center, reaching thousands of meters away. Vaguely, a blue light circle was formed, connecting the mountains. Abruptly, all 16 mountains collapsed while explosions reverberated in that massive pit. Vaguely, something slowly emerged. Chapter 9:14, The Mysterious Ancient City. Chapter 9:14, The Mysterious Ancient City. Boom boom. The ear-splitting explosions echoed from the deep place in the massive pit. It seemed like something giant was about to emerge. The massive pit was larger than 10 mu and it seemed to be almost bottomless. The subterranean gravity inside the pit was hundreds or even 1,000 times stronger than gravity on the surface. Even Na Xin, who was at ethereal god realm, didn't dare to jump in rashly. Each of the 16 mountains had the myriad weighty stone as its core. The mountains acted like a load of a lever. Once they sank deep underground because of the myriad weighty stone and the heavy gravity, their falling momentum would be terrifying. In the tremendous thunderclaps, 16 mountains pounded on the ground like giant iron hammers. Then, 16 mountains disappeared, sinking deeply into the earth. 16 massive holes appeared strangely as if they kept some stunning secrets. Shi Yang, Jester, Li Xiao, and the giants approached the massive hole in the center, waiting for something with weird faces. A long time afterward, a group of grand, imposing palaces slowly emerged from that massive pit. This group of palaces was around 10 mu. Each of the palaces was made of myriad weighty stone with carvings of complex and inexplicable patterns and drawings. They seemed to hide some marvelous secrets. Those palaces were built long time ago, and they had been buried underground for an unknown period. Dust and ashes covered everything. The gravity around the palaces was also intimidating. The group of grand palaces emerged completely from the deep pit. They were now situated above that pit. Earth and stones around the massive pit moved toward the center and compacted together, supporting the palaces. At this moment, the huge pit had disappeared, turning into a strange foundation for that group of palaces. The city walls of the palaces were as black as ink, and there were 4 gateways. The palaces looked like massive cubes, dozens of meters high. Each of the gateways was wide open, revealing 4 spacious roads leading to the inside of the palaces. However, these roads were magical. Unlike the other areas, they didn't have the extreme gravity. The palaces were bizarre indeed. Except for the 4 roads leading to the inside of the city, the gravitational field elsewhere was present and several hundreds of times heavier than the natural ground. However, standing on any spot on the roads would save people from the terrible gravity. Xin and Shi Yang were perplexed. They dully watched the palaces arising from underground, not knowing what to do. "I think we can get in there and see." After a while, all anomalies disappeared. After waiting and seeing nothing else, Shi Yang couldn't help but remind the crowd. Xin nodded continually, his eyes astounded. "We should go in there and check." Then, he led them on a road and entered the city. Shi Yang didn't lag behind. He chuckled, gathering his energy discreetly and walking with Xin to the city. This group of palaces was situated on a Tenmu area. It looked like a royal abode. Inside the city, they could see hundreds of different-sized buildings and neatly arranged streets. Each of the buildings here was made of myriad weighty stone with different patterns and drawings in the wall that perfectly combined with the myriad weighty stone, hiding unknown mysteries. It was strange that the gravity inside the city was normal, which was several hundred times less than on the surface of the old orchid star. Shi Yang sensed and found that the gravity in this city was very similar to Raging Flame Star area and Grace Mainland, the normal life stars. It seemed like it wasn't affected by the old orchid star. Shi Yang was surprised. He released his soul consciousness, scanning the entire palaces. Then he shook his head. "No living beings here." "Yeah, no living beings, indeed," Xin nodded, "but we found so many skeletons." They saw many peculiar, big skeletons on the streets and inside the houses. They seemed to belong to the pagans, monster clan, or demon clan, whose physiques were huge. And they also found some small skeletons as small as a human child. Thousands or even tens of thousands of skeletons were scattered around the city, on the streets, and inside the houses. Their postures varied. Some skeletons gathered on the street as if they were speaking to each other when they were still alive. Some stood by the shops as if they were bargaining for some goods. Shi Yang's group also found some sitting skeletons inside the special training yards. They seemed to have been cultivating before they died all of a sudden. It seemed like those thousands of skeletons around the corners of the city were doing their business and didn't know what would happen to them in the next minute. The disaster must have come abruptly. Nobody could have predicted it. All died at their spot. No one survived. Jester touched a skeleton. When his finger touched the bone, the whole skeleton turned into dust, falling to the ground and scattering. His face became gloomy, a little bit pale. It has decayed for so many years, dozens of thousands of years at least. Even if they were stronger when they were alive, they can't resist time. After the energy has dispersed all, the skeleton couldn't resist anymore. Li Xiao and the giants also tried. They came up with the same results. Whether it was a huge or lanky skeleton, once they touched it, it turned into bone dust and fall. So weak. Perhaps some of them used to be formidable. However, since they had died for tens of thousands of years, the energy in their bodies had all vanished. They became feeble, indeed. "Thousand-fold lotus," Xin suddenly shouted, dashing towards an area, his face thrilled. Thump thump thump. The thudding footsteps of the giants echoed like drumming. All the giant soldiers ran after Xin, their countenance excited. Xin didn't hesitate much, taking Jester and Li Xiao there as well. In the middle of the city, There was a massive pool. The pool was pitch black, as if the water in there was actually ink. It looked thick and viscous. A faint but pure aroma diffused from this pool. Jutting from the water of the pool was the thousand-fold lotuses. The thousand-fold lotus looked like water lilies that were much larger. Each of its petals was like brown glass growing magnificently. Each thousand-fold had 1,000 set of petals. From the seed pod outward, the number of the petals also increased. The ink-like water in the pool bubbled. 23,000-fold lotuses grew in every corner of the pool, as if someone had arranged them that way with hidden meanings. After they came, some of them released soul consciousness to sense. Immediately, they felt like their brains were shaken hard with buzzing and echoing sounds. Be careful. Don't release your soul consciousness. If you stir up your sea of consciousness, something serious will hit you hard. Shin hissed, preventing people from acting rashly. His reminder was a little bit too late. Jester and Li Xiao sat down, their eyes empty as their sea of consciousness was surging very hard and they couldn't bear it. They were frightened. Apparently, they had used soul consciousness to sense the flowers. Shi Yang sneered and then walked to Jester and Li Xiao. He stretched both hands above their heads. The strange energy of his soul urged. An extremely cold air shot out from his fingers, which looked like transparent threads, entering Jester's and Li Xiao's heads. Their chaotic sea of consciousness gradually calmed down under the effect of his strange energy. After a while, Jester and Li Xiao recovered. They paled and grimaced, not daring to act rashly anymore. When they looked at thousand-fold lotuses, they seemed scared. They understood that if Shi Yang didn't help them in time, when their sea of consciousness got completely chaotic, it would explode their souls. There was a high possibility that they would become crazy and never get their mentality healed again. Shin glanced at the two of them, frowning. The thousand-fold lotus is really eccentric. Your realm is low and you aren't mysterious like little Yang. Don't rush. Jester and Li Xiao beamed a forced smile, nodding in agreement. They had made up their minds. 23,000-fold lotuses scattered in the pool. When the bubbles in the water exploded, they created a black mist covering the entire pool like a black fabric sheet. Faint energy fluctuated from that mist. Shin and the giants became excited, but they didn't dare act recklessly. They wanted to see if this palace had something magical. This grand and imposing city suddenly emerged in the old orchid star. Inside the city was a pitch-black pool that seemed to be the resource that nurtured the thousand-fold lotuses. That pool should have something good. The more mysterious it was, the more dangerous it could be. As they knew nothing about this place, they had to restrain their excitement. Ah! Shi Yang suddenly lifted his face and studied the walls around. He was astounded, shouting. The city wall is taking in heaven and earth energy. Shin was very surprised, closing his eyes to sense. True. The strange patterns and drawings on the walls are also complicated formations. They can draw earth and heaven energy. This ancient city should have some exquisite spirit-gathering formations. It can gather earth and heaven energy. Those formations are even more perfect and marvelous than ones that I can make, Shi Yang complimented. After several minutes, he found that earth and heaven energy inside the city was much thicker than the energy in Old Orchid Star. Old Orchid Star was a level 7 life star with dense earth and heaven energy. The spirit-gathering formation had guided and thickened earth and heaven energy, pouring it into the ancient city and making it more abundant that it almost broke the limit. Warriors cultivating in this city could harvest a lot to increase their realms. Excellent. Shi Yang grinned continually. We wanted to build a city and now, it has just come to us. Haha. Shin was bewildered. You little boy. You are so lucky. Everything you touch becomes a fortune. This ancient city is big enough for our fellows. Shi Yang rubbed his chin, looking at the architecture of the city and speaking to Shin. Although houses in this city aren't small, it's still uncomfortable to the giants. I think it's not suitable for you guys to live here, right? Buildings in this ancient city weren't low. Living beings around 5 meters tall could stay here. However, giant children were already 10 meters tall. It would be a burden for them to live in this city. Apparently, the giants had never lived in this city before because it didn't have any similar buildings suitable for the giants. Oh, then can we have this ancient city? Shi Yang smiled, asking. Chapter 9:15, Harvest. Chapter 9:15, Harvest. No. Na Shin shook his head firmly and then forced a smile. If this ancient city can draw earth and heaven energy continually, cultivating here can help warriors a lot. However, it's like a country of the dwarfs to our tribe. I want to consider this matter more. Let's see if we can build more houses, the ones that our fellow giants can live in. Apparently, he didn't want to give it up. This ancient city was magical, indeed. However, at this moment, they didn't know much about this place. They didn't know what it was most suitable for. However, they knew that this place was very good for warriors to cultivate. Since the giants were also warriors, how could they give up a place that could boost their cultivation? How can we take the 1,000-fold lotuses? Shi Yang pondered, looking at Na Shin. They need a special container. Otherwise, their magical energy will disperse. And how to refine that container? I don't know. Na Shin beamed a forced smile. I will find someone to fabricate the container. After that, we will try to take the lotuses. I'm a blacksmith, Shi Yang said seriously. Tell me the materials. I can forge it for you. Materials? Na Shin scratched his head, speaking begrudgingly. I still need to ask someone. All right, so we will leave the 1,000-fold lotus for now. We're going to check this ancient city for once. Let's see if it has anything else strange. All right. Shi Yang, Jester, and Li Xiao formed a team, walking around the city to see if they could find anything good. The giants also scattered to different places of the city, raking through every corner to see if they could find anything special. This ancient city wasn't really big. It wasn't bigger than utmost 8 Purgatories city Shi Yang had built before. Shi Yang's team walked east. They searched each house carefully. Many corpses lay inside the houses. However, their skin and flesh were all gone, leaving only the decayed skeletons which scattered away at the first touch. After tens of thousands of years buried deep under the ground of the old Orchid Star, all things in this city had gradually lost their magical effects under the terrifying gravity. Many skeletons still had accessories like rings and jewels. However, they were all broken. And the items they stored inside were all damaged once they were exposed. No beam of energy could be found. Checking each house, they couldn't find anything useful. The team was disappointed. The 3 of them walked to the tallest building in the east part of the city. This building was like a 9-level tower, which looked similar to a soul altar. This tower had a large foundation and it got smaller all the way to the top. The main gate of that building was closed, and so were the doors of the other levels. This building didn't have a single window. It was also made of the black myriad weighty stone. However, there was no trace on the wall that proved that it was formed naturally. The 3 of them stood by the main door, trying to push it open. However, no matter how hard they had tried, they couldn't open it. Their soul consciousness couldn't seep through the stone either. Shi Yang even took the divine sword and slashed it several times. He could only leave some shallow marked on the stone door. We can't break it, Jester shook his head. This building doesn't look like other houses. It doesn't have any drawings or patterns. And it's not made of only the myriad weighty stone. It should have some other strange material. The myriad weighty stone is a top-quality stone material. I don't know which material can combine with the myriad weighty stone. However, I can confirm that refined myriad weighty stone is the toughest material in the world. Li Xiao also expressed his agreement. If we can't find the secret, we will never get into the place. Secret. Shi Yang smiled. All the items in this ancient city are decayed and rusted. Nothing remains. Where will we find the secret then? I don't know either. Li Xiao opened his arms, indicating that he had no idea. The 3 of them wandered around the tower building, trying everything they knew. However, they didn't succeed. Begrudgingly, they could only return to the pool where grew the 1,000-fold lotuses. At this moment, the giants had already returned. They were discussing something loudly. What did you find? Na Xin smiled, asking Shi Yang. A strange building that looks like a tower. It has 9 levels. But we couldn't open it. Did you find anything special? No. We found something. Shi Yang's eyes brightened. What is it? Na Xin unfolded his hand, smiling. These 3 things. They didn't decay after tens of thousands of years. Still intact. On his massive palm were a huge scarlet dragon skull with a red light moving on its surface, a wood lock around the size of a brick with natural textures as complicated as lines in human palms, and a small, thin book that was yellowed like a dried leaf. The thick words in that book looked like tadpoles. Shi Yang didn't know what language it was and which race it came from. I know 2 of them, Na Xin smiled contentedly. Please do tell. Shi Yang was eager to learn. This is the skull of the most valiant and dangerous evil dragon, a strong branch of the dragon clan. This evil dragon could be at level 13, as strong as an incipient god realm warrior. Its skull hasn't decayed yet even though it has been more than tens of thousands of years. It's the toughest and most magical bone then. Pausing for a while, Na Xin smiled and continued, to our giants, it's a good thing. After fusing it with our god body, we can reach a whole new level. While he was talking, the other warriors of the giant tribe all looked at that evil dragon's skull with a great desire in their eyes. Apparently, each soldier of the giant tribe knew the benefits that this skull could bring them. Evil Dragon was one of the strongest branches of the dragon clan. They were famous for their tough body and bones. A level 13 evil dragon was extremely rare. It could be compared to an incipient god realm expert. The skull was the unbreakable part of the evil dragon. To the giants who were good at physical training, it was the best treasure. What else? Asked Shi Yang. This lumber has a special, natural texture. If I'm not wrong, it's a piece of life ancient tree of the Wood clan. Na Xin paused for a while and then explained seriously, legends say that the Wood clan was born by a mysterious ancient tree. They call it the life ancient tree. The power Upanishad the Wood clan has been cultivating comes from the wood texture of that ancient tree. Where is that life ancient tree? Asked Shi Yang. I don't know. People say that it disappeared in the ancient time. The wood texture of the life ancient tree is formed naturally. It's not something people could carve. The wood texture is the basic power Upanishad the Wood clan cultivates. This lumber should be an original incipient grade material. If the Wood clan fellows could have it and comprehend the mysteries of the wood texture, they would gain supernatural powers. Na Xin frowned and continued, I heard that the Wood clan can use a special method to fuse the lumber of the life ancient tree into their body, which then brings them greater advantages. I think this lumber is the most precious treasure in this world to any member of the Wood clan. How precious? Asked Shi Yang. Na Xin smiled, not trying to conceal anything. I think the value of this lumber is enough to exchange for several life stars if we deal with the experts of the Wood clan. Several life stars? Shi Yang was dumbstruck. Nodded, Na Xin confirmed, it's useless to other clans, but it's a unique treasure to the Wood clan. Intimidating existences of the Wood clan could go crazy because of it. They could give up everything just to have this lumber. Shi Yang was moved, asking again. How about that book? I'm not sure about it. Na Xin shook his head. The language in this book is strange. I have never seen or heard about it before. However, since it could survive tens of thousands of years, it should be miraculous. Unfortunately, we can't understand the words. Oh, Shi Yang smiled, Precursor, you said that we would share all things equally, right? Na Xin's smiled withered. After a long moment, he nodded reluctantly. Tell me, how do you want to share them? The evil dragon's skull, the piece of the life ancient tree of the Wood clan Tilda. Shi Yang stretched his voice. Na Xin and the giants put on a bad countenance. They stooped as if it was their parents' funeral. All were dispirited. I want neither of them, Shi Yang added and then pointed at the ancient book. I want that freaking book. Na Xin's eyes brightened. The giants also cheered loudly. They didn't pretend or hide emotions, showing their real joy and excitement. You're a good guy. It's for you. Na Xin flicked his finger to throw the unknown ancient book to Shi Yang as fast as he could, as if he was afraid that Shi Yang would change his mind. Then, he hastened to stash away the evil dragon's skull and the lumber of the life-ancient tree, laughing happily. Done. You can't change your mind. The evil dragon's skull and the lumber belong to me. The giant tribe was well known for their kind nature. They weren't narrow-minded or sinister. They would show their hatred and friendliness on their faces. It was easy to live with this race. We can't take advantage of you. Na Xin was a little embarrassed. Hesitating for a while, he said, after we could harvest those 23, you guys should take 13 of them. It's the compensation for your loss. Please don't reject it. Okay, Shi Yang agreed frankly and forthrightly. Tribal oldie. Tribal oldie. While they had just sealed their deal, an earth-shaking voice arose from the grand mountain of the giant tribe. A muscular giant ran toward them, his body damp with sweat. After he arrived, he was startled to see the ancient city. Then, he shouted, "Tribal oldie, Zhen Jiyu is back." His wounded severely. Na Xin changed his visage, walking out of the city and headed to the grand mountain. He didn't even have time to notify Shi Yang. All the giants followed him, cursing and shouting indignantly. Shi Yang was surprised. Hesitating for a while, he turned to Jester and Li Xiao. We should go and check it out too. Chapter 916, The Ransom of 700,000 Divine Crystals. Chapter 916, The Ransom of 700,000 Divine Crystals. Grand Mountain Range. A beefy giant lay on the ground in the mountain. He looked pale and exhausted. Standing next to him were 5 giant soldiers. They also had wounds all over their body. They stooped, not saying anything, their face dismal. Xiao Man kneeled on the ground, his eyes were watery as he sobbed and called, "Dad." The giant tribe lived in the old Orchid Star. Their population was just several hundred. Na Xin was the only tribal oldie and the one who had the highest realm at the second sky of ethereal god realm. Na Xin was the only second sky of ethereal god realm warrior of the giant tribe. Under his command was Xiao Man's father, Zhen Jiyu, the current chief of the giant tribe. He had the first sky of ethereal god realm cultivation base. In the far west of the Agate Star area, he had quite the reputation. At this moment, Zhen Jiyu was hurt severely, which was mainly from the damage in his soul altar. His eyes were dim and reflected no light. When Shi Yang, Jester, and Li Xiao arrived, Na Xin was frowning, asking the 5 wounded soldiers to explain the situation. Listening to the soldiers, Na Xin grimaced as rage filled his eyes. After Shi Yang had arrived, he just listened, not participating in their conservation. Shortly after, he knew what had happened. The old Orchid Star was in the far west of the Agate Star area, one of the most remote areas in this star area. There were around 10 life stars near the old Orchid Star where the members of the Demon Clan and the Monster Clan dwelled. Besides this far west area, there was another strange place, Broken Starfield. Broken Starfield was in the center of the 10 life stars in the far west. Rumor said that it was formed by countless pieces of dead stars. The Broken Starfield was rich with special cultivating materials. Some people used to find original incipient grade materials there. Because of this reason, many lived around this area, and warriors from other regions of the Agate Star area would also often come to the Broken Starfield to collect materials. The giant tribe often went to the Broken Starfield to find some special materials to exchange for divine crystals or something suitable for their cultivation. Anyway, the Broken Starfield wasn't a peaceful place. It was very chaotic. A group of lazy bandits in the Broken Starfield who didn't want to work often robbed the weak forces when they had found something special. This bandit group were dominant forces, so they were confident enough. Zhen Jiyu had brought 10 giant soldiers on that trip. They had found a valuable heaven fiery crystal. However, a force came to rob the fruit of their labor before they could harvest the crystals. Of course, Zhen Jiyu and the giants wouldn't let them do that. They burst out fighting. The giants won. However, the giants were always kind and friendly. They didn't destroy the others and instead let them leave. Shortly afterward, The bandits came back with more support. They had prepared for a new battle. Zhen Jiyu and his giant fellows were beaten up. Not only did the attackers occupy the heaven-fiery crystal mine, but they also damaged the giants badly. They had captured 7 giants and asked Zhen Jiyu to give 100,000 top-quality divine crystals to exchange for 1 giant. If they didn't submit enough divine crystals, they wouldn't let the hostages go. Those giants would become their mine slaves forever. That force had 2 leaders. Both of them were at the second sky of ethereal god realm. Zhen Jiyu and his giants weren't their equal opponents. They retreated, defeated. Zhen Jiyu had his soul altar damaged badly. His condition was awful and it would take a lot of time to recover. Although they had Na Xin, they had only 1 second sky of ethereal god realm. If they had to fight, they would be defeated again. 7 giants means 700,000 top-quality divine crystals. We can't give so many divine crystals like that. One of the wounded soldiers gritted his teeth. Tribal oldie, we should risk our lives and fight them. I know where their base is. Na Xin was worried. He didn't smile as he used to do. Light sparkled in his eyes continually as if he was considering something. After a while, Na Xin sighed weakly. They have 2 second sky of ethereal god realm experts. Our tribe has only me at this level. Zhen Jiyu was able to fight once. But he's hurt now. If we have to fight them, nothing good will happen. As the tribal oldie of the giant tribe, he knew what to consider, which was to protect the giants. He didn't let anger confuse him. But we can never get 700,000 divine crystals. One of the others hissed. His eyes were bloodshot like a caged wild beast struggling painfully. Tribal oldie, Zhen Jiyu exhaled, his face ashen. We can't be impulsive. We aren't, they're equal matches. Na Xin forced a smile. I won't lose my mind. For the future of our tribe, I won't act recklessly. He sighed. Then, he stepped forward and patted Zhen Jiyu by his shoulder. Glancing at Xiao Man sobbing, he smiled reluctantly. Don't worry. I'll handle this. I won't let our fellows be humiliated by becoming the other's slaves. But 700,000 divine crystals? Zhen Jiyu wanted to get up. Even if we gather all of what we have, we would still lack a lot. We might have no solution if this happened sometime before. However, while you were away, some distinguished guests came. Na Xin glanced at Shiyang, comforting them. Don't worry. If I say I can handle it, I won't let our fellow giants be imprisoned. I promise you. Listening to his solemn words, Zhen Jiyu could ease his mind a little bit. However, he was still confused. Take a good rest, Na Xin said weakly and then turned to the other 5 giants. You all too. Go rest and recover well. The children need you to live well. War. Dad. I swear I will take revenge for you. Xiao Man cried hoarsely, clenching his fists. His eyes were watery as he said, I will definitely become stronger. I will kill all of my dad's enemies. Good boy, good boy. I know, you will be stronger than your old man. Zhengu's tired face was loving. But you have to promise me that before you are capable, you will never act impulsively. I understand. Dad, I understand. Xiao Man is a good boy. The teenager nodded resolutely, his young and tender face filled with reverence. Na Xin sighed inwardly, asking Zhen Jiyu and the other 5 giants to rest. He took around 10 giants, leaving in anger. Oldie, no matter what you want to do, we will support you. The 10 giants were longing for a fight. It was obvious on their kind and honest faces. The giant tribe was never cowardly. Quite the contrary, they were valiant and powerful. The same-level warriors weren't equal matches to the giants. However, there were 2 reasons explained why this race wasn't strong enough. First, their population was small. And their reproduction wasn't quick enough. The other reason was their simple minds. People always took advantage of them. In many battles to compete for materials or other goods, they always fell into the disadvantageous position. Gradually, they lost cultivating materials while enemies plotted against their members who died on the battlefield. Even if they were strong, with this kind of decrease for tens of thousands of years, they would decline. Their tribe was gradually declining. Absolutely, we won't fight. Na Shin darkened his visage. We aren't strong enough. If we lose our members, our number will decrease even more. We've been in the disadvantageous for tens of thousands of years. If we don't change our mindset to be more patient instead of fighting recklessly, our tribe will be extinct. Listening to him, 10 muscular giants quieted down. Little Yang, what do you think? Na Shin pondered for a while. He couldn't help but turn to Shi Yang. If we aren't strong, we can only be patient. When we accumulate enough, it will not be too late to take revenge. Shi Yang considered for a while and then continued to give his ideas. We got a big harvest this time. When we can pick up 23,000-fold lotuses, we will bring a tremendous advancement to your tribe. I think you guys will get stronger shortly. You still have the evil dragon's skull and the lumber from the life-ancient tree of the Wood clan. They all can bring you immeasurable benefits. If you have time, you can take revenge after. Your human clan does have a good vision. Yeah, you are the clan that knows how to rest and accumulate power. Na Shin nodded. I will decide to apply your ideas. I want to sell that lumber from the life-ancient tree of the Wood clan. I think we will have enough divine crystals to pay the ransom for our fellows. It's true, Shi Yang smiled. I want to go to the Broken Star Field. Are you interested? Asked Na Shin. Shi Yang was bewildered. The Broken Star Field is the center of the Far West. It has cities and explorers from different races of the Agate Star area. It's a kind of hustle and bustle type city. I think. After a trip to that place, you will have a better understanding of the Agate Star area. With only my words, it's hard to understand the area, said Na Shin sincerely. It sounds nice. We don't have many things to do here. Shi Yang thought and then nodded with a smile. All right, I will go with you. Yeah, I need to arrange my people. I will bring some of them. Come here 3 days later. We will depart. Great. Shi Yang arrived at their temporary gathering point. Shi Yang only told Fei Lan, Leona, Yang Tian Emperor, and Long Zhu about the discovery of the thousand-fold lotus and the mysterious ancient city. He asked them not to tell anyone else. Whether it was the mysterious city or the thousand-fold lotus, they were critical matters that could drive people crazy with greed. Many races from Grace Mainland weren't loyal to them. Some were their enemies previously. If they knew about these things, it was unknown whether they would have different thoughts. They could sell Shi Yang's team out to gain more benefits. For example, if they told the experts in the other areas of the Agate Star area, people living in the old Orchid Star would receive a disaster pouring on their heads. Then, he told them he wanted to go to the Broken Star Field. Fei Lan, Leona, Ka Tuor, Yang Tian Emperor, Zi Yarrow, and Feng Rao also wanted to go to open their eyes to the general situation of the Agate Star area. 3 days later, Shi Yang brought around 10 warriors to the Grand Mountain of the giant tribe. They sat neatly on the giant's shoulder and departed from the old Orchid Star to go to the Broken Star Field. Chapter 9:17, Yang Tian Emperor is well prepared. Chapter 9:17, Yang Tian Emperor is well prepared. Including Na Shin, there were 4 giants who left the old Orchid Star. Na Shin was at 2nd sky of Ethereal God Realm, and the other 3 were at 3rd sky of Original God Realm. Shi Yang brought 9 warriors, including Fei Lan, Leona, Ka Tuor, Carthew, Zi Yarrow, Feng Rao, Yang Tian Emperor, Long Zhu, and Jester. Including Shi Yang, there were 10 members of this team. Due to the tremendous gravity of the old Orchid Star, the warriors with low realms, Feng Rao, Yang Tian Emperor, and Long Zhu, couldn't use their powers to get rid of the gravity and jump into space. However, as soon as they left the old Orchid Star, the pressure they had to endure disappeared immediately. They calmed down and felt better. Yang Tian Emperor and Long Zhu had the lowest realm here. They were at 3rd sky of True God Realm. They hadn't reached King God Realm yet. It would be hard for them to move in outer space. However, with the coverage by Shi Yang and the others, they were going to be safe and sound. After they departed the old Orchid Star, Yang Tian Emperor lifted his head to observe the starry sky in the vast galaxy, sinking into his thoughts. A desperate, mournful, and begrudging thought diffused from his aura. However, since his eyes brightened shortly afterward, it disappeared. Brilliant light suddenly twirled around his body as his soul altar spun. Hey! Shin glanced at him and then he got frightened. This kind of power Upanishad is really profound. Look at this energy fluctuation. I think he will break through soon. Shi Yang's eyes brightened. He studied Yang Tian Emperor for a while and then frowned, speaking to Jester. Do you have any suitable pellets to help the warrior break through to King God Realm? Jester felt a pain in his heart and he nodded. Yeah. How many do you want? Cough cough. Longzhu caught everyone's attention, speaking embarrassedly. I'm also about to break through. When I was in Grace Mainland, I was just one step away. If the energy there were enough, I would be at King God Realm by now. Shi Yang was surprised. When he knew Longzhu, the old man had already been at the peak of true God Realm. It was true that he was just one step away from the new realm. After they had arrived in the old Orchid Star, Longzhu had prepared to break through. Seeing Shi Yang asking Jester for pellets, he became thick-skinned to ask for one too. Jester was a divine-grade alchemist, the famously talented individual in the Raging Flame Star area. The pellets he refined were several levels higher than the alchemist of Grace Mainland. Give me all that you have. Shi Yang pondered for a while and then grinned. I'm just borrowing them. I will pay you back later. Of course. I believe you. Jester wasn't so content. However, he still sincerely took out the pellets from his fantasy sky ring. These bottles have the pellets to nurture the soul and refine the god body. They should be more than enough for them. Shi Yang's eyes brightened, smiling. All right. Don't show me that face. You will receive more in the future. Jester became happy. Remember that you said that. You have to keep it in your mind. Shi Yang, if you don't have enough pellets, I have some here. You can give them to your great-grandfather, Zi Yarrow said softly. Feng Rao was bewildered for a while and then she hastened to say, I have some too. Ha ha. Jester laughed happily. They are going to break through to the King God Realm from the true God Realm. They won't need so many pellets like that. I've given them enough. You girls don't need to do so. Hearing him, Zi Yarrow and Feng Rao gave up the thought of giving away their pellets. They glanced at each other and then turned around. Shi Yang rubbed his nose, pretending to have not seen anything. He divided the pellets that Jester gave him into 2 proportions and threw them at Yang Tian Emperor and Longzhu. As Yang Tian Emperor and Longzhu were prepared, they didn't hesitate. They opened up the bottle and swallowed the pellets. After taking in the pellets, just like other warriors when they advanced into the King God Realm, Longzhu started his process step by step. He began to condense his god body first. But Yang Tian Emperor was different. His body suddenly emitted an immense blood qi which was abundant to the acme after he had swallowed the pellets. It seemed like he had absorbed the power from the pellets easily. An immense energy surged, winding around him like bunches of light. Yang Tian Emperor closed his eyes, his face solemn. The marvelous desperate intent domain was released. Shortly after, it became the god domain easily. Inside his god domain, Shi Yang, Zi Yarrow, Feng Rao, Fei Lan, Leona, and even the members of the giant tribe were affected. A haunting shadow appeared in their mind while thick clouds covered their sea of consciousness. A thought of despair arose in their hearts. This intent domain is extreme. Fei Lan couldn't help but hiss. She looked at Yang Tian Emperor with respect. I have never seen this kind of power Upanishad before. Shin frowned, observing Yang Tian Emperor for a while. All of a sudden, he shouted, Despair power. It's the despair power. My oh my. Shi Yang turned his head around. Precursor, you. Our agate star area has a legend of a man who had cultivated despair power. Every time he fell into despair, he became stronger, his power rocketing endlessly. It seemed like he didn't have a limitation. He was the invincible legend of the agate star area. Tens of thousands of years ago, he was the overlord of the star area. I heard that his power was intimidating. He could always challenge people who had higher realms than his. Although he'd disappeared for many years, we still talk about his legends. Shin took a deep breath, his face solemn as he looked at young Tian Emperor. The despair power is tough to perceive. No inheritance could generate this power, Upanishad. Also, there are no books or scripture about it. Rumor says that only some extreme individuals who are very cruel to themselves can practice this. The giants were scared, looking at young Tian Emperor with deep fear. Fei Lan, Leona, and Ka Tuor were also frightened, their faces unnatural. Young Tian Emperor was the undying legend in the endless, the real overlord. He was the sort of man that Na Xin had mentioned. He was cruel, ruthless, and extreme to himself to break through a realm. Young Tian Emperor wasn't afraid to initially intrude the demon area, letting demon kings Bo Zun and Kai Yang bind him to the great formation of the demon clan. He was tortured for many years. He had lived as a skeleton inside that magical formation for dozens of years. He understood this kind of pain. He wanted to get in there to endure the torture that wasn't designed for humans. He was absolutely an extreme person. After breaking through to the true God realm, he had finally comprehended the meanings of despair. When Grace Mainland ran out of power, all people fell into depression. And young Tian Emperor's realm in the most desperate situation was still increasing. Under the given circumstances of an exhausted continent, he had reached third sky of true God realm in a few dozen years. He was absolutely a genius, one of the most ruthless and extreme kinds of men. Young Tian Emperor could break through in a place like Grace Mainland and reach high realms. As soon as he arrived in the Agate Star area, he burst out his outstanding features because he had accumulated for years for this moment. Young Tian Emperor had the immortal demon blood and he understood the mysteries of the immortal rebirth secret. He was terrifically wise, resilient, and persistent. After he had collected all the supplements, he seemed to have made the final step. The tremendous blood qi moved like blood snakes swimming in his body. Shortly after, his body became red like a hot iron. Murky air oozed out from his body. Young Tian Emperor's process of refining the god body was several times faster than that of Long Zhu. After only 1 hour, young Tian Emperor had finished refining his god body. He opened his cold eyes. His pupils seemed more capable of putting people into endless despair. Do you still have more pellets? He looked at Shi Yang. Shi Yang looked at Zi Yarou and Feng Rao. The two women understood. They immediately took out the suitable pellets in their fantasy sky rings. They didn't hand them to Shi Yang but threw them directly at young Tian Emperor. He snatched the pellets, not looking to see what they were, and just swallowed them as if the pellets were beans. He closed his eyes, murmuring, "I will break through continually." Everybody was frightened. Alchemist Jester was confused. Could he endure so many pellets like that? If the number of pellets he consumes is more than he can endure, he will explode. As soon as he finished, his words became true. Young Tian Emperor immediately shot out blood. His bones cracked loudly. Beams of blood shot out while his vessels exploded, his bones cracking and releasing marrow. At this moment, young Tian Emperor looked mournful like a wailing ghost. He didn't have any deliberate gleam like in the past. However, at this moment, he was still cold and ruthless like an ice rock. He didn't seem to feel the pain. People could even see a crazy, insane smile on his mouth. A madman. A crazy devil. A maniac. Na Xin, Fei Lan, Leona, and Zi Yarou looked at him bewilderedly. They also had the same thought. From the true God realm, he takes one step to enter the King God realm, condensing the God body and the creating the God domain. He had them done in one vigorous effort and continued to enter the second sky of King God realm. Have you ever seen or heard of anyone like him? Carthew felt that his throat was dry, licking his lips and looking at Leona with a forced smile. Leona was called the Crazy Devil in Raging Flamestar area. She furrowed her eyebrows. The scars on her face twitched, her eyes complicated. No. Never before. Fei Lan looked at Na Xin. Na Xin shook his head, giving a forced smile. It's not very likely. Basically, it's not easy to enter the King God realm from the true God realm. Without several years to steady the realm, the warrior can't grasp the needed requirements to open the next door. He's an unusual fellow. Except for Shi Yang, everybody else was afraid, discussing Yang Tian Emperor's mysterious and magical progress. My great-grandfather was always a hero for his whole life. He had walked the path that people didn't dare to take, thought of things that people didn't dare to think, endured the pain that nobody dared to endure. Of course, nobody could catch up with his attainment. Shi Yang just smiled deliberately. Under people's attentive looks, Yang Tian Emperor's god body had broken to a level where it looked like a bloody, shattered skeleton. He looked no different from a corpse. To ordinary people, getting hurt at that level meant that their god body was completely damaged. However, after his god body was burst off, Yang Tian Emperor's heart was still beating vigorously, constantly releasing the immense blood qi. A miracle happened quickly. His broken vessels wiggled like small snakes, connecting each other. His bones produced new marrow and then they became transparent and shiny like jewels. On his bloody skeleton, new blood and flesh grew rapidly, reviving. His god body was closest to a cooperating machine, which was producing blood, flesh, marrow, and vessels. This was the miraculous recovery power of the immortal rebirth secret. Apparently, Yang Tian Emperor had a much more profound level in practicing the immortal rebirth secret than Shi Yang. Also, his attainment was much more significant. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.